Billion-dollar betrayal. Billion-dollar betrayal. A dark billionaire suspense romance. Camille Sterling. Billion-dollar betrayal, a dark billionaire suspense romance. Copyright 2026 Camille Sterling. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except for brief quotations in a book review. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental. First edition, 2026. For everyone who chose the third path, the truth does not change according to our ability to stomach it. Flannery O'Connor. Contents. Prologue. What the Diamonds Don't Tell You. Chapter 1. The Life She Built, the Men Who Walked Into It. Chapter 2. The File That Wasn't Meant for Her Eyes. Chapter 3. Nadia knows something is wrong before Eden says a word. Chapter 4. Roman comes home. Chapter 5. Plot point 1, she makes the choice. Chapter 6. The third player. Chapter 7. She goes looking in places she wasn't meant to find. Chapter 8. The first deal she makes with the devil. Chapter 9. What Roman actually knows. Chapter 10. Lyra Bennett, the twist inside the foundation. Chapter 11. The dinner where everything almost breaks. Chapter 12. Victor Calder steps out of the shadow. Chapter 13. The confrontation she wasn't ready for. Chapter 14. Plot point 2, all is lost. Chapter 15. The thing about Silas, a twist nobody expected. Chapter 16. She builds her case. Chapter 17. Roman finds out what Eden has done. Chapter 19. Victor Calder, face to face. Chapter 20. The Empire Falls. Chapter 21. The thing that almost breaks them anyway. Chapter 22. Eden visits her mother's grave. Chapter 23. What clean looks like. Chapter 24. The third choice. Epilogue. 1 year later. Prologue. What the Diamonds Don't Tell You. I used to think the city looked like a promise at night. All that light stacked on top of itself, floor after floor, window after window, like everyone down there was awake and working towards something. I used to stand on Roman's terrace and feel like I was part of it. Like I had finally arrived somewhere I was meant to be. Tonight it just looks like a lot of light. The champagne in my hand is warm. I stopped drinking it 20 minutes ago, but I haven't put it down because putting it down would mean going back inside, and Roman is inside, on the phone, and something about the way he's talking has kept me out here in the November cold longer than I planned to stay. I can't hear him. That's the thing. I can usually hear him anywhere in this apartment because Roman Calder does not do quiet. He fills rooms. He fills conversations. He has the kind of voice that assumes it will be listened to, and it always is. But right now, on the other side of that glass door, he is speaking in a way I have never once heard in 2 years of knowing him. Low. Careful. Measured in a way that sounds like control but feels like fear. I don't turn around to look at him. I look at my own reflection in the glass of the champagne flute instead. The woman looking back at me has good hair tonight. She's wearing the black dress Roman said made her look like a painting he once saw in Florence, which was the kind of thing Roman said and actually meant, which was one of the reasons I said yes when he asked me to marry him 7 months ago on a rooftop in Rome at sunset, like something out of a movie I would have rolled my eyes at before I was in it. The woman in the glass is wearing a ring that catches light even at 11 at night on a November terrace 40 floors above Midtown Manhattan. The ring cost more than my mother made in 3 years of working back-to-back shifts at the hospital. I know because Roman told me what it cost and watched my face while he did, not to show off, but because he wanted to see if I would flinch. I didn't. I should have asked myself why flinching was the response he was checking for. The woman in the glass looks happy. She looks so genuinely, stupidly happy that I almost feel sorry for her. I think, this is the happiest I have ever been. And then, right behind that thought, the way a shadow follows a body, I think, why does happiness feel like holding your breath? I've been holding it since he stepped away to take the call. 22 minutes ago. I know because I checked my watch at the beginning and I have been checking it since and telling myself to stop checking it, which has not worked. He kissed my cheek before he walked away from the dinner table. He said, 1 second, which is the thing people say when they know it won't be 1 second but they don't want to explain how long it will actually take. I said, take your time, because I was the woman in the black dress at the rooftop dinner and I was happy, and happy women don't make their fiancés explain phone calls. I'm out here on the terrace now in the cold with warm champagne and an uneasy feeling I can't name, watching the city pretend it has nothing to do with any of this. His voice comes through the glass again. Not words. Just sound. And the sound of it does something to the back of my neck. There's a number. A large one. The way he says it, not with the casual ease of a man discussing money he actually has, but with the tight precision of a man reciting something he needs to get exactly right. And then, after the number, a pause. And then a name. I lean back slightly toward the door without thinking about it. Without deciding to. My body makes that decision before my mind catches up, the way bodies do when they sense something the brain hasn't finished processing yet. I hear 2 words. Clear enough. Just 2. Luminary Foundation. My charity. My children. My name on every legal document, every filing, every public record for 6 years. The thing I built from nothing after my mother died and left me $30,000 and a post-it note on the refrigerator that said make something real, Eden. He says the name of my foundation in a voice I have never heard him use, on a call he walked away from the dinner table to take, at 11 at night. I turn around. The glass door reflects me back at myself before I can see through it, the woman in the black dress, the ring catching the light, the champagne she stopped drinking 20 minutes ago still in her hand because she didn't want to go back inside. She looks happy. She looks like she has no idea. She looks like the last moment before something, and the something is already in the room behind her. I put my hand on the door handle. I don't open it yet. I stand there 1 more second in the cold and I make myself hold the feeling I have right now very still, the way you hold an object up to light when you're not sure what you're looking at. The feeling is not suspicion. It's not fear. It's smaller than both of those things. It is the specific sensation of a question you don't want to ask forming itself in the back of your throat. I have been so happy. I open the door. Roman is standing at the kitchen island with his back to me, one hand flat on the marble surface, the phone pressed to his ear. He's still in his dinner clothes but his jacket is off and his sleeves are rolled and there's a tension in the line of his shoulders that I recognize, now that I'm looking for it, as something he has been carrying for a long time. He doesn't hear me come in. The terrace door seals quietly behind me, the way everything in his apartment does, smooth, engineered, leaving nothing to chance. I hear him say, very quietly, it stays clean. Do you understand me? It stays clean. Then he turns. He sees me. His face does something. A small thing. A fraction of a second of something, not guilt, or not only guilt, before he smooths it into the warm, familiar face of the man I love. He says, hey, and smiles like I am the best thing he's seen all day, which is the way he always smiles at me, which I have always believed completely. I smile back. I am very good at smiling back. Sorry, he says, lifting the phone slightly. Work. It's fine, I say. It's cold out there. He opens his arms and I walk into them because that is what I do, that is what we are, and he holds me against his chest and I can feel his heartbeat and it is steady, perfectly steady, the heart of a man with nothing to confess. I think, I heard you say the name of my foundation. I think, what does it stay clean mean? I think, 22 minutes is a long call. I say none of it. I turn my face into his collar and I breathe in and I hold it, and the city glitters outside every window, and the ring catches the light even here in the dim kitchen, and somewhere in the back of my mind a door is opening that I will not be able to close. Tomorrow I will find the file. Tomorrow everything I know will begin to rearrange itself into a shape I cannot ignore. But tonight I am still standing in the arms of the man I love and I am still, technically, happy. And that is the last night that word will mean what it used to mean to me. Chapter 1. The life she built, the men who walked into it. The first sticky note on my bathroom mirror says board meeting 9 a.m. Don't be late in capital letters I wrote myself 3 days ago because I knew I would need the capitals. The second one says call Marcus Ree, Bronx intake list. The third one, stuck slightly crooked in the bottom right corner where the mirror fogs up when the shower runs, is older than the others. The writing is different on that one. Smaller. My mother's handwriting, not mine. It says make something real, Eden. I have not taken it down in 4 years. I brush my teeth looking at all 3 of them and I tell myself today will be manageable. I tell myself this every morning. I am wrong about it most days and right about it enough days to keep trying. My breakfast is half a piece of toast and a coffee I drink standing at the kitchen counter because sitting down to eat would mean committing to the morning in a way I'm never quite ready for before 7 a.m. The toast gets left on the counter when my phone starts. It always starts before I finish the toast. I have not eaten a complete breakfast on a weekday since 2019. I know this because Nadia pointed it out to me once with the specific tired concern of a woman who has watched me operate at a deficit for years and has accepted that she cannot fix it, only document it. I grab my bag, my keys, my second coffee in the travel mug Roman bought me that keeps things hot for 6 hours, which I know because he tested it before he gave it to me. That is the kind of man Roman Calder is. He tests things before he gives them to you. He wants to be sure. I take the subway because I always take the subway. Roman would send a car. Roman has offered to send a car approximately 40 times in the 2 years I have known him, and approximately 40 times I have said no thank you, because the subway is 40 minutes in which no one needs anything from me and I can sit with my coffee and my notes and be nobody in particular. Rich men forget that nobody in particular is sometimes the most restful thing you can be. The Luminary Foundation's main office is on the 4th floor of a building in Harlem that used to be a garment warehouse and before that something I could never figure out from the floor plan. The elevator is slow. The hallway smells like the plug-in air fresheners that Deja, our office manager, rotates between lavender and something she calls fresh linen, which smells to me like the idea of clean laundry rather than actual clean laundry. The walls have drawings on them. Children's drawings, framed properly, not taped, framed, matted, hung at the height a child would hang them if a child could use a level. That was my idea. Every child who comes through a Luminary program gets to put something on a wall. Something that says I was here and it mattered. I stop at the wall for a second the way I always do. There's a new one near the door to the main office. A house with a sun and 2 stick figures holding hands, the way children draw houses when they're trying to draw safety. The name in the corner, written in a child's careful block letters, is Amara. I don't know which Amara. We have 3 in the housing program right now. But one of them drew a house with a sun, and it is on our wall, and I put my hand on the frame for just a second before I push open the office door. This is why I do it. Not the meetings. Not the $40 million annual budget that I have to fight for every quarter. Not the media coverage or the donor galas or the fact that my name is on a building in the South Bronx that we opened last spring. Just Amara's house with a sun. My assistant, Theo, hands me a folder before I've fully walked in. He is 24 and meticulous and has the energy of someone who started his day at 5 a.m. and would like credit for it without actually saying so. Board packet, he says. Meetings at 9. Lyra Bennett confirmed. The Bronx intake numbers are in the back and I'm warning you now, it's not good reading. When is it ever, I say, and take the folder. The Bronx intake numbers are not good reading. There are 93 families on the housing waitlist for the Bronx facility alone. 93 families who applied, who qualified, who were told we would help, and who are waiting in apartments that are too small or too cold or too dangerous or all 3 while we try to move money from one column to another fast enough to open the next 12 units. I read the list once and then I turn the page because I've learned that I can't help them by sitting with the weight of it too long. I can only help them by moving. Nadia walks in at 8:47 with 2 coffees, one of which she keeps and one of which she sets on my desk with the precision of a woman performing a ritual. She's in a gray blazer and has the look she gets when she's been reading email at midnight. I know this look the way I know the crack in the ceiling above my old apartment bed, perfectly, without having to look directly at it. Good morning, I say. Monarch Gate, she says. Not good morning. Not how are you. Monarch Gate. I keep my eyes on the board packet. Good morning, Nadia. $2 million, she says, sitting down across from me without being invited, which she stopped waiting to be invited approximately 9 years ago. Day before yesterday. Third donation in 6 months from a Calder Holdings subsidiary that I cannot find on any public donor registry, any press release, or any prior communication between their foundation liaison and ours. She opens her own folder on my desk, which means she came in here already prepared for me to try to redirect her. Monarch Gate LLC. First donation was April. 400,000. Then July, 800,000. Now 2 million. You see the pattern. It's increasing, I say. It's increasing, she agrees. You want to tell me why a shell company attached to your fiancé's conglomerate is running escalating 7-figure donations through our general fund with no naming rights request, no program designation, and no press strategy? I look up at her then. She looks back at me with 11 years of friendship behind her eyes and not a single softening of the question. Roman is a donor, I say. He's donated personally before. He has, she says. I know what those look like. They come with his name on them and a note from his personal assistant and sometimes flowers, which I have always found excessive. This is not that. This is a subsidiary I've never heard of, routing money I didn't solicit, into a general account I didn't flag for major gift processing. She pauses. I'm not asking you this as your lawyer, Eden. I'm asking you this as your person. Is there something I should know? I think about the terrace. The champagne going warm in my hand. The pitch of Roman's voice through the glass. A number. A name. It's clean money, Nadia, I say. Roman wouldn't. She watches me for a second longer than comfortable. Then she closes her folder. She picks up her coffee and she takes a drink and she says, very evenly, okay. Just okay. The way she says okay when she is not finished but is choosing to be finished for now. Board meeting in 10 minutes, I say. I know, she says, and stands up. She walks to the door and stops with her hand on the frame and doesn't turn around when she says, I pulled the incorporation records on Monarch Gate this morning. The registered address is in New Jersey. Then she's gone. I sit with that for 3 minutes. I sit with it through the rest of the board packet and through Theo knocking to tell me people are gathering in the conference room, and I sit with it through the walk down the hall where I stop and look at Amara's drawing one more time. I sit with it the way you sit with a sound you heard wrong in an empty house, telling yourself it was nothing, already knowing it wasn't. The board meeting is 2 hours and 20 minutes of the usual controlled chaos. We talk about the Bronx waitlist and the spring fundraising calendar and the audit that's coming in February and the new partnership proposal from a workforce development program in Queens that I think is strong and 2 board members think is premature. Lyra Bennett, who joined the board 14 months ago via a referral from Roman's corporate foundation, speaks twice and both times says the right things. She always says the right things. She is polished in the way of someone who has practiced being in rooms like this one and knows exactly how to take up the correct amount of space. I have always liked her. I tell myself I still like her. I take notes and redirect and make 3 decisions before noon and eat half a protein bar from my desk drawer between the meeting and a site visit at the Brooklyn facility, where a 14-year-old named Darius shows me the essay he's been working on for his high school application and reads me a sentence from it out loud with the terrified pride of someone handing over something true. The sentence is, I used to think surviving was the same as living until someone showed me the difference. I tell him it's the best sentence in the essay. He tells me there are only 2 sentences so far. I tell him he can build the whole thing around that one. He looks at me like I've given him something and I feel, for a moment, like everything is completely fine. By the time I get back to my own desk it is 6:15 and I have missed 3 calls from Roman, answered 17 emails, and eaten the other half of the protein bar standing in a stairwell. I sit down and look at my phone and look at Monarch Gate's donation record on my screen and look at my phone again. I call him back. Hey, he says, and I can hear that he's been waiting. Long day. Long enough, I say. You called 3 times. I missed you, he says simply. Like it's the most obvious thing. Like missing me is a fact he states the same way he states anything else, without decoration or strategy. This is one of the things about Roman Calder that makes him very difficult to think clearly around. He says things that should sound like lines, and they don't. I'm heading home, I tell him, and I mean the penthouse when I say it now, which is a thing that happened so gradually I don't remember when it shifted. Good, he says. I'll have dinner ready. He does. When I walk in, the apartment is warm and there's something in the oven that smells like the pasta dish he made the second time he ever cooked for me, which I told him once was the meal that made me stop pretending I wasn't falling in love with him. A glass of red wine appears in my hand before I've taken my coat off, extended without ceremony, without a word, just handed to me the way you hand something to a person when you know exactly what they need and you've already gotten it. Thank you, I say. He takes my coat and hangs it and comes back and kisses my temple and says, sit. Tell me about your day. I sit at his kitchen island and I look at the wine in my hand and the men moving around his kitchen with the ease of someone comfortable in his own space, and I feel the way I always feel here, which is safe in a way I cannot fully explain and have stopped trying to. I tell him about Darius and his sentence. About the Bronx waitlist. About the board meeting running long and the Brooklyn site visit and the protein bar in the stairwell. I tell him everything the way I always do, everything except the one thing I didn't say to Nadia either, the thing that's been sitting at the back of my throat since this morning. Monarch Gate. His voice through the glass last night. A number, and my foundation's name. He listens the way he always listens, like nothing else exists while I'm talking. He asks about Darius by name after I mention him. He asks what high school Darius is applying to. He asks whether the Workforce Development Partnership in Queens has a solid director, because in his experience the director matters more than the program design. He is so present. He is so completely, attentively here. I think about asking. I open my mouth once and close it and drink some wine instead. You're quiet, he says, not looking at me, adding something to the pot on the stove. Just tired, I say. He stirs. You have that look you get when you're doing math in your head. I always do math in my head. Not like this, he says, and looks over his shoulder at me for just a second. His eyes are calm. Warm. The eyes of a man with nothing to hide, or the eyes of a man who is very good at this, and the terrifying thing, the thing I have not yet fully admitted to myself, is that I genuinely do not know which one. I smile at him. I drink my wine. I decide to ask tomorrow. Tomorrow is already coming faster than I know. Chapter 2. The file that wasn't meant for her eyes. The server room smells like dust and something electrical that has been running too long without being checked. I have been meaning to get someone in to look at the ventilation in here since October. It is now the second Thursday of November and I am standing in front of a rack of blinking hardware at 9:47 at night because the auditor's report is due Friday morning and the backup drive with last quarter's financial annexes is somewhere in this room, and Theo, who would normally find it in 4 minutes, went home at 6 because I told him to go home at 6 because he had been here since 7 in the morning, and I am not the kind of director who lets her 24-year-old assistant run himself into the ground on my behalf. So here I am instead. Roman is in Dubai. He texted me at 6:30 his time, which was 1:30 in the afternoon my time, to say the meetings were running long and he'd call when he could. He sent a second text 20 minutes later that was just a photograph, the view from his hotel window, all that flat gold light sitting on top of the water, and underneath it he wrote "Wish you were here," which is not the kind of thing Roman Calder says out loud because he considers it sentimental, but he texts it sometimes, in lowercase, like the smallness of the letters makes it easier to mean. I texted back a photo of the protein bar I was eating at my desk and wrote same. He sent back 3 laughing emojis and then nothing else, which meant the meeting started again. The cleaning crew left at 8. The building is so quiet right now that I can hear the elevator running 2 floors below me and the hum of the server rack and my own breathing, which is the kind of quiet that makes you aware of yourself in a way you aren't during the day when there is always noise to hide inside of. I find the backup drive on the second shelf, labeled in Theo's handwriting, in a case that also contains 3 other drives he's labeled with the same neat consistency he applies to everything. I pull it out and I'm about to leave when the monitor on the server room workstation, which should be dark because no one uses this terminal after hours, is not dark. It is showing a directory. The screensaver never activated, which means something accessed this terminal recently enough to keep it awake. I look at the door behind me. The hallway is empty. I look back at the screen. I should not stop. I have the drive. The auditor report is waiting on my desk and I have been here for 13 hours and my back hurts and Roman's penthouse is 40 minutes away and I was going to run a bath and not think about anything complicated until morning. I sit down at the terminal. The directory on the screen is our shared drive. I know this system because I approved the infrastructure when we upgraded 2 years ago, and I make a point of understanding the architecture of anything that holds the foundation's data. I know what the folder structure looks like. I know the naming conventions we use for every category of document. I know the filing codes the way I know the floor plan of every facility we operate, not perfectly, but well enough to know when something is wrong. The folder at the top of the directory is wrong. It is labeled LF, OPS, INT, 77Q. That looks like one of ours. It has the right prefix and the right general format. But the suffix code doesn't match any category we use. We don't have a 77Q designation. I open the Properties window and check the creation date. 6 days ago. I created no new folders 6 days ago. Theo created no new folders 6 days ago. I would know because new folder creation outside of standard protocols requires my sign-off, which I did not give. I sit there and I look at the date for a moment and I think about Nadia saying Monarch Gate, saying the registered address is in New Jersey, saying it the way she says things she doesn't want to leave alone but is choosing to leave alone for now. I open the folder. The first thing I see is that it is large. Not 1 or 2 documents. 43 files. All of them labeled in the same off-format code, all of them dated within the last 8 months, the oldest one going back to March of this year. I open the oldest file first. It is a transaction log. I know what transaction logs look like because a nonprofit that operates on $40 million a year processes a significant volume of financial transactions, and I have sat in enough audit reviews to be able to read one without a translator. Incoming wire transfers. Dates, amounts, reference codes, source tags. Everything that should be there is there in the right columns. But the source tags on these transactions don't match anything in our donor database. I open a second file. Same structure, different dates. I open a third and a fourth and I sit forward in the chair and I stop breathing the way I stop breathing when I am reading something I need to understand very precisely before I react to it. The amounts are not round numbers. That is the first thing I notice, and it is the thing that makes the hair on my arms stand up before my brain catches up to why. Charitable donations come in round numbers. 10,000. 100,000. 500,000. Even the ones that don't are close enough to round that you can see the intention behind them. These amounts are not round and they are not close to round. They are precise in a way that looks almost mathematical. 311,000. 809,000. 1,299,000. I don't know enough to be certain, but I know enough to know that these numbers have the flavor of something calculated, not donated. My phone is in my hand before I decide to pick it up. I photograph the screen. Then I scroll and photograph again. Then again. 12 photographs total, going through the transaction log methodically, making sure I have the reference codes and the source tags and the dates. My hands are completely steady. I notice this and I find it strange. Some part of me has already moved past shock into something colder and more functional, which is a thing I learned from my mother without knowing I was learning it. When things go wrong, you do not fall apart until the work is done. You fall apart later. You fall apart in private. I close the files the way I found them. I check that the folder looks undisturbed. I stand up from the terminal and I stand in the server room for a moment with the backup drive in one hand and my phone in the other and 12 photographs on my camera roll that I do not fully understand yet. The building is still quiet. The elevator hums below me. The server rack blinks. I walk out of the server room and down the hallway past Amara's drawing on the wall, and I don't look at it because I can't right now. I cannot look at a child's drawing of a house with a sun right now and hold myself together, and I need to hold myself together to get from this building to a taxi to the penthouse without doing something that cannot be undone. Like calling Nadia. I want to call Nadia so badly that my thumb is already hovering over her name in my phone and I have to actively tell it no. Not tonight. Tonight I need to think before I talk, and I cannot think clearly when Nadia is talking because Nadia is the kind of woman who fills a silence before it finishes forming, and right now I need the silence. I hail a cab on 125th Street and I sit in the back of it with the backup drive on my lap and my phone face down against my thigh, and I look out the window at the city moving past me. The same city I looked at from Romans Terrace 2 nights ago and thought looked like a promise. It looks different from a cab. It looks like what it is, concrete and glass and 10,000 stories happening simultaneously with no regard for any of the others. My phone lights up. I flip it over. Roman. A voice note this time, which means the meeting's ended and he is somewhere quiet. I press play. His voice fills the back of the cab, low and a little tired the way he gets when he's been in a room with people he has to perform for all day. He says, "Hey. Just finished. It's late here. I was thinking about the pasta I made you on Tuesday, which I know is a strange thing to be thinking about in a conference room in Dubai, but there it is." A pause. "You're probably still at the office. Tell Theo to go home." Another pause, and then quieter, "Miss you. Call me when you can." I listen to it twice. I sit with his voice in the darkness of the cab and I look at my phone and I think about the transaction logs with their wrong numbers and their unrecognizable source tags and a folder that appeared on the Foundation's server 6 days ago that no one on my staff created. I think, I might be misreading this. I think, I am not misreading this. I pay the driver and go upstairs. Roman's penthouse is different when he isn't in it. Not cold exactly, because the building keeps it warm and the lights are on timers and there is nothing objectively wrong with the apartment in his absence. But there is a quality to the space that I have noticed before and never examined, which is that it is waiting for him the same way I am. The rooms hold his shape. The kitchen still has the pan from Tuesday's pasta draining beside the sink because Roman washes dishes immediately and I am a person who lets things drain. The blanket on the couch is folded the way he folds it, which is a precise and specific fold that I have never been able to replicate. His reading glasses are on the coffee table beside a book he's 80 pages into, the spine broken and careful in a way that says he's been reading it slowly. I walk to his study. I don't know why I go there first. I could have gone to the bedroom or the kitchen or the bathroom to run the bath I promised myself. But I go to the study and I stand in the doorway and I look at the room the way you look at something when you're not sure what you're looking for. His desk is clear. Roman believes in a clear desk. He says disorder in a workspace is disorder in thinking, which is the kind of thing he says that I used to find mildly pretentious and now just understand as the way his mind functions. There are books on the shelves organized not by author or title but by something I eventually figured out was the order in which they changed how he thought, which is the most Roman Calder organizational system possible. There are photographs. One of his company at the groundbreaking of the Midtown Tower 4 years ago. One of a shoreline somewhere I don't recognize. One of us, just one, and it's small, in a frame that costs more than it looks like it costs, on the shelf near the window rather than the desk because he said he didn't want to look at it while he worked, he wanted to look at it when he needed to remember why the work mattered. He told me that the night he put it there. I thought it was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me. I look at the photograph now. I look at his desk. His books. The hard drive on the shelf that is labeled backup in his own handwriting and is never plugged in but is always in exactly the same place. The pen cup with 4 pens and a pencil. The notepad with nothing written on it. I am looking for something in these objects that would tell me I am wrong about what I found tonight. Some evidence in the ordinary details of who he is that would make the transaction logs make sense in a way that doesn't mean what I think they mean. The objects don't give me anything. I take my shoes off in the hallway and I brush my teeth and I get into the bed that smells like him because I have been sleeping here for 8 months and his sheets and his pillows have become the smell of feeling safe, and I think about how that is going to complicate things considerably. I stare at the ceiling. My phone is on the nightstand. 12 photographs on the camera roll. 43 files in a folder that shouldn't exist. Transaction logs with numbers that look like they were chosen rather than donated, moving through the Foundation's general account like water through a system that was built specifically to receive them. My foundation. The one I built with $30,000 and a post-it note and 6 years of working so hard I sometimes forgot to eat for days. The one with Amara's house on the wall. The one with 93 families on the Bronx waitlist. The one with my name on every filing, every quarterly report, every legally binding document connecting me to every dollar that moves through it. My name. I turn onto my side and look at the empty half of the bed. I think about calling Nadia. I think about calling Roman. I think about calling neither of them and just lying here with the weight of what I found pressing on my chest until morning comes and forces me to decide what to do with it. The city outside is never fully dark. There is always some light coming through the gap in the curtains, enough to see the shape of the room, enough to know where you are. I lie in it and I breathe, in and out, and I wait for sleep that is not coming, and I think about what my mother used to say when things went wrong and there was nothing to do about them until morning. She used to say, "Close your eyes, Eden. The problem will still be there when you open them. Might as well rest first." I close my eyes. The problem is still there. I do not rest. Chapter 3. Nadia knows something is wrong before Eden says a word. I pour my coffee at 8:13 and I do not drink it. I know I don't drink it because at 8:47 Nadia walks past my open office door, stops, backs up, and looks at the full mug sitting on the edge of my desk with the particular expression she reserves for things that confirm what she already suspected. She doesn't say anything. She keeps walking. But I hear her footsteps slow down the hallway and I know she is filing it somewhere, adding it to whatever she's been building since she walked in this morning and looked at my face. The problem with being known by someone for 11 years is that you cannot perform fine at them. You can perform fine at acquaintances and colleagues and people who love you too recently to know the difference between your real laugh and the one you produce on a slight delay when your head is somewhere else entirely. You cannot perform it at Nadia Cross, who has watched you move through the world long enough to have memorized the rhythm of you, and who notices the moment that rhythm is off the same way a musician notices a wrong note, not by thinking about it, but by feeling it land incorrectly in the body. I know she knows. I have known since she walked through the front door. What I don't know is how long I can hold her off, which turns out to be approximately until noon. I spend the morning doing the work because the work does not pause for personal crises and because moving through it gives me somewhere to put my hands and my eyes that is not my phone and the 12 photographs on it. I take a call with the Brooklyn facility director about a staffing issue. I review the audit prep documents for next week. I sign off on a grant application for a workforce training pilot in the Bronx that I have been trying to fund for 4 months. I eat half a granola bar and tell Theo the coffee is cold when he asks if I want him to reheat it, which is a lie, because the coffee was never anything but full and untouched since I poured it. At 10:30 Roman calls from Dubai. I let it ring twice before I pick up, which I have never done before in 2 years. 2 rings is enough time to put my face where it needs to be. "Hey," I say. "Hey." His voice is morning rough, which means it's early evening for him and he's been in meetings since before dawn. "Did you sleep?" This is not my moment. This is theirs. The work I have done for 6 months, the server room and the forensic accountant and the diner in Queens and the wire and the board meetings and the 42 pages and all the rest of it, all of it exists in service of this moment and this family and this door, and the moment and the family and the door do not need me to stand in the center of them. They need me to have built the structure that makes them possible and then to stand over here by the window and watch them walk through without making it about the standing over here by the window. I watch them move across the lobby toward intake. The older girl pauses at the table and looks at Deja something with the careful interest of a child deciding whether to ask and then deciding not to yet. The younger one has not let go of the suitcase. She has looked at the color on the walls, I watch her look at it, and I watch her face decide something about the color, some small private conclusion that I cannot hear and am not meant to. They go through the intake door. It closes behind them. I look at the space where they were. Nadia appears beside me. I did not hear her come across the lobby and I do not know how long she has been standing here, but her presence is so familiar that it did not announce itself. She simply arrived the way she always arrives, already there before I registered the arriving. She looks at the intake door. She says, very quietly, "You did this." I shake my head. "We all did," I say. She is quiet for a moment in the way she is quiet when she has something she intends to say and is deciding how to say it. Then she says, "Take the win, Eden. You earned it." I look at the intake door. I think about the woman's face when she saw the lobby. I think about the younger daughter's hands on the suitcase handle. I think about the color on the walls that 3 children from the youth program chose because they understood what the color needed to say. I think about the funding documentation that is publicly available and fully audited and connected to nothing that should not be connected to it. I think about Amara's drawing in the Harlem office, the house with a sun, the 2 stick figures holding hands, the name in careful block letters in the corner. I think about my mother bringing food to a family moving into a new apartment when I was 9 years old. Because they needed to know someone was glad they were there. I didn't do it to win, I say. Nadia looks at me for a moment. Then she looks back at the intake door. Then she drinks her coffee. She does not push it further, which is the correct thing, which is the thing I would expect from the woman who stood beside me at a window in March looking at a line of 17 people and handed me coffee and said nothing. The morning goes on. Families continue to arrive. Not all at once, the intake is scheduled and managed and Theo has his clipboard and the coordinator has her process, but they come, and I watch them come, from my position by the window or from the doorway of the administrative corridor where I can see the lobby without being in it, watching the thing we built do what it was built to do. By noon we have processed 9 families into initial intake. 9 families who were on a waiting list, some of them for months, who came to a building in the South Bronx on a Tuesday morning and walked through a door and sat in chairs the color of something warm and began the process of having a stable place to live. I go back to the main office in the afternoon. The work does not stop because the facility opened, the work continues the way it always continues, the emails and the calls and the grant reports and the staff questions and Theo and the plans he has started rearranging in addition to the filing system and the board packet for next week's meeting. I do it all. I do all of it with the specific attention I have been giving everything since January, which is more careful and more transparent and more intentional than the attention I gave things before, which was careful and intentional in its own way but did not account for what I know now about what care and intention are not sufficient to prevent if the architecture underneath them is rotten. The architecture is not rotten anymore. I make sure of that every day. At 6 in the evening I close the office. I say goodnight to Theo who is, in fact, rearranging the plants and who looks mildly caught and mildly unrepentant about it, which is exactly right, and I say goodnight to the coordinator who is finishing the day's intake notes with the focused efficiency of someone who does this because they believe in it rather than because they are obligated to, and I put on my coat and I pick up my bag and I walk past Amara's drawing on the wall and I stop. I look at it. The house with a sun. 2 stick figures holding hands. Amara in careful block letters in the corner. I put my hand on the frame the way I put my hand on it on the very first day I noticed it, the morning all of this started, the morning I came in and found Nadia waiting with Monarch Gate on her lips and the first thread of the whole thing already in her hand. I was there that morning. I am here this evening. The drawing is on the wall in between. Everything that happened happened. The drawing is still on the wall. I go outside. I take the subway home. My apartment, my own, the one I never gave up, which I will be paying rent on for the foreseeable future because the lease is mine and the space is mine and the vanilla candle is mine and I am not ready to give any of that up and may not be for a long time. I go upstairs and I change out of the work clothes and I make coffee in the small kitchen that has my books visible from where I stand at the stove and I take the coffee to the terrace. My terrace. It is not the terrace on the 47th floor of a building in Midtown overlooking the skyline of one of the most expensive zip codes in the city. It is a small terrace on the 7th floor of a building in the West Village that overlooks a street with a bar on one corner and a laundromat on the other and a tree that is just beginning, in April, to consider the possibility of leaves. The city from here is not the skyline. It is the city the way you see it when you are inside it rather than above it, the particular eye level of a life that is located in the middle of things rather than elevated above them, which is where I have always been and where I intend to stay. I stand on the terrace with my coffee. Not champagne. Not the tall narrow glass with my reflection at the bottom and the ring catching the light and the sound of Roman's voice through the glass door. Coffee, in a mug I own, on a terrace I pay for, looking at a street that is mine in the way that streets are yours when you have walked them long enough. The ring is not visible. My hands are wrapped around the mug and I am not looking at my hands and the ring is where it is, which is on my finger, which is where it has been since a rooftop in Rome at sunset, and the question of what it means and what it is going to mean is still open, still living in the part of me that holds things until they are ready to be decided, and I am not going to rush it and no one is asking me to rush it and the ring is where it is and I am here. I think about the third path. I found the truth. I had 2 choices, stay silent or destroy the men I loved. I chose the third one. I chose to take the thing that was being used for harm and rebuild it into something that could not be used that way again, and I chose to do it not for myself and not entirely for him but for the families in the South Bronx housing facility who walked through a door this morning and sat in chairs the color of something warm and began to believe that someone had built something for them that was actually for them. That was the third path. That was what it was always about. The street below is doing what streets do at 7 in the evening, people moving between where they were and where they are going, the laundromat running through its cycle visible through the window, the bar beginning to fill, a man walking a dog that is trying to stop and smell everything and the men trying to maintain pace and neither of them winning. The city does not know what happened 6 months ago or 6 weeks ago or today. It just goes on. It was going on the night I stood on Roman's terrace and held champagne I did not drink and heard my foundation's name in his voice through the glass and could not yet name the feeling that started in me then. The feeling has a name now. It is not a simple name. It is the kind of name that takes the whole of what happened to understand, which is this: the feeling is the feeling of a person who found out the ground beneath them was not what they thought it was and did not fall, who dug down through the bad ground and found something underneath it that was solid and built on it and is standing on it now, 7 floors up on a small terrace over a street in April with a coffee in both hands and a city that is exactly what it has always been. I breathe in. The air is April air. Cold still at the edges but with something in it that was not there in February, some small announcement of what is coming, the specific quality of air that has started to change its mind about winter. I breathe out. All the way out. I have been holding some of every breath for 6 months. The habit of keeping a reserve, the physical knowledge of a woman who has been managing something that required constant readiness, who has been half inhaled since September, who has been holding back just enough air to move fast if she needed to. I breathe all the way out. The full breath. The complete one. Nothing held back. Nothing in reserve. Just the breath going out until it is all gone and then the next one coming in to replace it, clean and entire and unheld. For the first time in 6 months I breathe all the way out. The city goes on below me exactly as it always has and always will, floor after floor of light and life and 10,000 stories happening at once with no interest in any individual one, and I am inside it, just a woman on a small terrace with her coffee, breathing. I think about 9 families. I think about the younger daughter's hands on the suitcase handle. I think about the color on the walls. I stand in the April air and I breathe and I look at the street and I think about Deja's something on the table and Theo's clipboard and Nadia's coffee and an intake coordinator who does her work because she believes in it and a drawing on a wall that says Amara in careful block letters with a house and a sun. I think about my mother. Because they needed to know someone was glad they were there. I am still here. I am very glad to be here. I drink my coffee. The city turns its lights on one by one the way it does every evening, floor after floor of them, and I watch them come on in the early dark of an April evening and I think about what tomorrow looks like, which is the foundation and the intake list and the ethics board agenda and Theo's plants and 100 ordinary things, and I think about what the day after that looks like, and the day after that, and I find that I can see them, the days ahead, I can see the shape of them, which is something I could not do 6 months ago when the shape of everything was obscured by the thing I was inside. I can see clearly now. The ground is solid. The building is clean. The doors are open. I breathe all the way out and I look at the city and I am exactly where I am supposed to be and everything I promised to protect is still standing and I made something real. I made it real from $30,000 and a post-it note and 6 months of the hardest thing I have ever done, and I did not do it to win and I did not do it for myself and I did not do it to be remembered. I did it because someone needed to know they were glad they were there. The city counts its lights. I finish my coffee. I go inside. Epilogue. 1 year later. This week, if things had gone the way my mother planned them, a woman named Helen Park would have called me. She would have said, "Miss Caldwell, I have a letter for you, the one your mother left in our care, the one with the delivery date of your 30th birthday," and I would have driven to Cobble Hill and sat in a small office and opened an envelope I had never seen and read 3 pages in my mother's handwriting for the first time and it would have been the most significant thing to happen to me in an otherwise ordinary week. Instead I am 30 years old today and the letter has been in the inside pocket of a coat in my closet for 8 months and I have read it enough times that I could write it from memory, and the most significant thing to happen to me this week was not receiving a letter but hosting a dinner, which my mother would have found entirely appropriate because she was a woman who believed that the most significant things are usually the ones that look like ordinary occasions. I cooked. I want to say that first because it surprised me. I have not cooked a real meal in a year of real meals, the kind that requires more than one burner and takes longer than 20 minutes, and I cooked tonight because it was my birthday and I wanted to do something with my hands that was not strategic or documented or reviewed by an ethics board, something that was just the making of a thing for people I wanted to feed. I made the pasta my mother made on Sundays, the one she never wrote down because she said a recipe is just instructions and instructions are for people who don't trust themselves yet, and I made it from memory and it was not exactly right and it was close enough. Nadia arrived first. She brought champagne, which I opened and poured and actually drank this time, standing in my own kitchen in my own apartment on my 30th birthday, and it tasted like champagne, just that, no other meaning. Petra Cole came, which surprised everyone. She called me 3 weeks ago and said, My assistant tells me you have a birthday in March and I said yes and she said the date and I confirmed it and she said I will come if that is acceptable. And I said of course and she showed up tonight in the same sharp professional composure she brings to everything and handed me a bottle of wine she had clearly researched because it was exactly right and said happy birthday in the voice she uses when she means something and does not intend to make a production of meaning it. She has been, since February, the closest thing I have to a mentor, which is not a word I used with her because she would find it unnecessary, but it is what she is, and I am glad she came. 3 of the Foundation's program managers. Maya, who runs the youth literacy program and who has the specific quality of a person whose commitment to the work makes everyone around them work harder without anyone having to say anything about it. James, who manages the housing intake and who sent me a text this morning that said 9 families last week and I said I know and he said I know you know but I wanted to say it out loud and I said thank you and meant it in the specific way you mean thank you to someone who understands what the number represents. Deja, who makes something for every occasion and who brought a cake tonight that had 30 candles on it arranged not in the standard circular pattern but in the shape of a building, which when I looked at it I understood was the South Bronx facility and which made me stand in my kitchen for a moment doing the thing I did at the window in March that is not quite crying but is in the same room as it. And a family from the housing program. Renata, who came through intake in March with her 2 daughters, the older one named Grace and the younger one named Lily who has not, in the months since I have known her, released her grip on the cartoon suitcase except to sleep. Renata and I have become something I did not plan for and do not have an exact word for, not friends in the complete sense, not the organizational relationship of director and program participant, something in between, something that formed in the ordinary way of 2 people who keep being in the same rooms and who have recognized something in each other that does not require explanation. She came tonight because I asked her and because she said yes without making it complicated, which is the kind of person she is. And Roman. He is at the far end of the table. Not beside me. Not in the position of the fiancé, the arm around the back of the chair, the claim of proximity. At the far end, between Grace and Renata, and he has been there for the last 40 minutes making them laugh with a story about Dubai that I have been listening to from across the table and which I am fairly certain is entirely fabricated, the details accumulating in the specific way of a story that is built for its audience rather than retrieved from memory. The camel detail appearing exactly when Grace's attention was starting to drift, the customs officer arriving in the narrative at the moment Renata needed something to laugh at. I watch him from across the table. He catches my eye once, briefly, and there is nothing performed in the look, no message being sent, just 2 people at a dinner table who know each other and looked at each other at the same time and looked away. He brought wine tonight, not diamonds. Not a gesture or a symbol or anything that required me to receive it as a statement about what we are. He brought wine because it was a dinner and wine was the appropriate thing to bring to a dinner, and he handed it to me at the door and said happy birthday and I said thank you and he went inside and found his seat at the far end of the table. He has been doing this for 6 months. Showing up where it is appropriate to show up. Staying out of things where it is not. Contributing to the partnership between the Foundation and the Calder Holdings Compliance Division with the meticulous visible accountability he has brought to everything since the restructuring, publicly, without complaint, doing the work without asking to be praised for doing it. The institutional investor calls for his resignation have mostly quieted. The stock is recovering slowly, which in financial terms means it is recovering and in human terms means the company is still standing and the people who work in it still have jobs and the charitable compliance division is now being studied by 3 industry organizations as a model for the sector, which Petra told me with the specific satisfaction of a woman who built something she is proud of and will not say she is proud of out loud. Roman stayed standing. He is still standing. And he is at the far end of my table on my 30th birthday making a 9-year-old girl laugh with a fabricated story about a camel, which is not a thing anyone would include in his public profile and which is one of the truest things I know about him. After dinner, after the cake and the candles and the moment where everyone at the table sang in the slightly embarrassed way of adults who are not sure how seriously to take the singing and Lily took it entirely seriously and sang with full commitment, which meant everyone else had to commit. After Nadia and Petra and Maya and James said their goodbyes and Renata gathered her daughters and the cartoon suitcase and I held the door and said good night, after all of it, Roman is still there. He is at the sink. He turned on the water while I was saying goodbye to the last person at the door and by the time I come back to the kitchen he has already washed 3 glasses and is working through the plates with the matter-of-fact efficiency of someone who has decided to do a task and is doing it, not because it makes a statement, not because it is being observed, just because the dishes need washing and he is here. I pick up a dish towel. I stand beside him at the sink and I dry We work through the dishes in the quiet that used to exist between us in this kitchen before everything, the specific quiet of two people who know each other well enough that the silence does not require management, and it is the same quiet and it is different in the way that every familiar thing is different now, recognizable and changed simultaneously, the same room seen from a slightly different angle. He hands me a bowl. I dry it. I say, Victor's sentencing is next month. He does not stop washing. He says, I know. I say, are you okay? He is quiet for a moment. Not the managed quiet, not the quiet of a man deciding how to present himself. The real one, the quiet of a man actually sitting with an actual question and answering it honestly, which is what I asked him to give me 6 months ago when I told him the only way was completely, and which is what he has been giving me since. He says, I will be. I look at him. He is looking at the water, his hands in the sink, and there is something in his face that is not simple, that has the weight of a man who has been carrying the knowledge that his father will go to federal prison, which means the knowledge that the men who built the framework of his entire childhood will spend years in a facility somewhere being held accountable for 28 years of harm, and which also means the knowledge that the harm was real and was done and cannot be undone and will be with him for the rest of his life regardless of what the sentencing determines. He said he will be okay. I believe him. Not the way I used to believe him, which was the belief of a person who trusted without examining what the trust was built on. The way you believe someone when you know them fully, when you have seen them in the worst version of their circumstances and have watched what they did with that version, when you have been lied to by omission and have chosen to stay anyway and have made that choice with your eyes open and your hands on all the available information. That kind of believing is different. It is heavier and slower and it does not arrive automatically or stay without maintenance, it requires tending. And the tending is something we are both doing, deliberately, in the ordinary way of people who have decided to build a thing they know will require upkeep. It is better than what came before. Me too, I say. He hands me the last dish. I dry it. I put it on the stack. We stand at the sink in the kitchen of my apartment and the table behind us has the candles still burning down and the evidence of the dinner on it, and through the window the street is doing what it does on a Saturday night in March, people moving between things, the city going on, the laundromat closed now but lit from inside, the bar at the corner full. I reach up and I turn off the kitchen light. We stand in the dark. It is not dramatic. It is not a photogenic moment, not the kind that gets described at brunch or to friends over the phone, not the kind that announces itself as significant while it is happening. It is a small dark kitchen in a West Village apartment on a Saturday in March, and we are two people standing in it after a dinner for my 30th birthday that included a 9-year-old girl who sang happy birthday with full commitment and a fabricated story about a camel in Dubai and pasta that was almost exactly right. I stand in the dark and I think about what this is. It is not happiness. I want to be honest about that because I have been honest about everything for 6 months and I am not going to stop now in my own kitchen in the dark on my birthday. Happiness is lighter than this. Happiness is the thing you feel before you know the cost of it, before you have been taken apart and have looked at all the pieces on the floor and have decided, piece by piece, which ones to put back together and in what order. This is not happiness. This is something harder than happiness. This is the thing you build after happiness breaks, after you find out that the ground beneath everything was not what you thought it was, after you spend 6 months in a server room and a forensic accountant's office and a parking garage and a Queen's diner and a private dining room on East 54th Street and a grave in a February cemetery, after you build something clean from the ruins of something that was being used for harm and stand on it and find that it holds. This is the thing you build when you know the cost and you build it anyway. When you look at the person beside you with the full knowledge of everything they did and everything they did not do and everything they are capable of and everything they are still learning to be, and you decide, deliberately, with complete information and both eyes open, to keep building. It is not happiness. It is the decision to build, made again, every day, with full knowledge of what the building requires. I think it is better. I reach up. I turn the light back on. It is a small ordinary kitchen. The dishes are done. The candles on the table have burned further down. The city is outside the window going on exactly as it always has, floor after floor of it, indifferent and full of life. We finish the dishes. He hands me the pan and I dry it and I put it away where it goes and the kitchen is clean and my 30th birthday is almost over and the letter my mother wrote is in my coat pocket where it has lived for 8 months. And next month Victor Calder will be sentenced and the foundation's intake list will keep moving and Lily will probably still be gripping the cartoon suitcase handle and Theo will reorganize something that did not need reorganizing and there will be 100 phone calls and an Ethics board agenda and a compliance review and all the ordinary architecture of a life that is doing the thing it was built to do. He folds the dish towel and puts it on the counter. He says, "Happy birthday, Eden." He says it the way he says things when he is not performing them, plain and direct, the two-syllable version of meaning something. "Thank you," I say. He gets his jacket from the chair where he left it. He says good night. He goes. I stand in the kitchen of my own apartment on the night of my 30th birthday and I listen to the elevator in the hallway and the sound of the city through the window and the quiet of the apartment that is mine, entirely mine, with my books on the shelves and the vanilla candle burned down to its last half-inch in the pasta pot drying on the rack and the 30-candle cake with its building shape half-eaten on the table. I think about my mother at 30. I think about what she knew at 30 and what she was carrying and what she had already decided to be quiet about, and what she was, underneath all of that. A woman who ran a community fund in a church basement and said "I love you" at the end of every call and kept a grocery list in handwriting so small it looked like a different language and brought food to people moving into new apartments because they needed to know someone was glad they were there. She was 30 once and she made choices and she lived with them and she left me $30,000 and a post-it note and 3 pages and 14 pages and a word in parentheses. Soon. I made it. I am 30. I blow out the kitchen light. I go to the window. The city is exactly what it always was. Every light it has ever had. Every story running simultaneously in every lit window with no interest in any other, including mine. I look at it the way I have been looking at it my whole life from the windows of rooms that have been mine at different stages of the life, the specific piece of it available from each window, and this piece, my piece, the 7th floor West Village piece, is the one I intend to look at for a long time. I breathe in. I breathe all the way out. The breath releases. Complete. My mother would say, "Make something real, Eden." I would say, "Mom, I am still making it. It is not finished. It will not be finished. That is not a problem. That is the work." I turn off the light. I go to bed. Tomorrow the foundation opens at 9. There are families waiting. I will be there. Author's note. Thank you for reading $1 Billion Betrayal. This story was born from the question that keeps me up at night: what happens when the person you trust most is the one you should trust least? Eden's journey is about more than betrayal and billion-dollar empires. It's about a woman who refuses to be reduced to a victim. She doesn't run, and she doesn't break. She builds. That's the kind of story I believe in, the kind where strength isn't loud, it's steady. If this book kept you turning pages, if Eden stayed in your head after the last line, I'd be grateful if you left a review. Reviews help independent authors more than you know. They help other readers find stories like this one. And if you want to know when the next book drops, follow me. There's more coming. Camille Sterling. Acknowledgements. To the readers who pick up a book by an author they've never heard of and give it a chance, you are the reason stories like this exist. Thank you for your trust. To every person who has ever had to choose between what's comfortable and what's right, I see you. That kind of courage doesn't always make the news, but it changes the world. To the city of New York, for being exactly the kind of beautiful, ruthless, complicated backdrop that a story like this deserves. And to anyone who has ever built something real from nothing, this one is for you. About the author. Camille Sterling writes dark romance and suspense fiction about complicated women, powerful men, and the lies that hold empires together. Her stories live in the space between love and destruction, where the stakes are high, the tension is higher, and the endings are earned, never easy. When she's not writing, she's probably reading thriller novels at 2 in the morning, drinking coffee that's gone cold, or arguing with her characters about the decisions they insist on making. $1 Billion Betrayal is her debut novel. Follow Camille Sterling for updates on new releases. Also by Camille Sterling. More titles coming soon. Follow the author for release announcements. Some, I say, which is technically true. I slept from about 3 to 5:30, which is some. You sound off. I turn my chair toward the window so that if anyone walks past the glass partition of my office they cannot see my expression. I'm tired, I say. Long week. It's Friday, he says. Come home tonight and don't bring your laptop. It's Thursday, I say. A pause. It's Thursday, he agrees, and I can hear him almost laughing, the low sound he makes when something catches him by surprise. I'm losing days. These meetings. He exhales. How's the audit prep? On track, I say. Good. Another pause, warmer. I miss you. I look at the window. The city outside is gray and flat, the November sky sitting low like it's considering coming down the rest of the way. I think about the transaction logs. I think about a folder that appeared on our server 6 days ago. I think about a number and the name of my foundation spoken in a voice I didn't recognize. I miss you too, I say. It comes out steady. I am furious at myself for how steady it comes out, and also grateful, and also ashamed of the gratitude. We talk for 7 more minutes about nothing difficult, the Dubai meetings, a restaurant he went to alone because his colleagues had room service and he refuses to have room service in a city with actual food, a story about his driver that makes me laugh once, genuinely. When we hang up I sit with the phone in my hand for a moment and I think, I am talking to a man who may have done something unforgivable and I am laughing at his stories and telling him I miss him. Then I think, I do miss him. That's the part one cannot seem to resolve. At noon Nadia opens my office door, holds up 2 fingers at Theo as she passes his desk in a way that means hold everything, and closes the door behind her. Conference room, she says. I have a call at 12:15. Theo will push it. She is already opening the door again. Conference room, Eden. The conference room is at the end of the hall and has a lock that is mostly used when we have sensitive donor conversations. Nadia locks it now. She puts her laptop on the table and her coffee and she pulls out the chair across from mine and she sits down and she looks at me with 11 years of everything between us and she says, "How long?" Not a question. A starting point. How long what? I say. How long have you been carrying something you haven't told me? I look at her. She looks back. Nadia Cross is 41 and has the kind of face that does not move unless she wants it to, which she developed over 14 years of practicing corporate and nonprofit law in rooms where showing the wrong thing at the wrong moment costs you everything. But I know her face the way she knows mine, and what is behind her eyes right now is not professional patience. It is the look of a woman who is frightened and is not going to let the fear move her. I reach into my pocket and I put my phone on the table between us. I open the camera roll. I slide the phone across to her. She picks it up. She looks at the first photograph. Her face does not change. She scrolls. Still nothing. She scrolls again, and I watch the stillness in her settle into something different, not calm, but the opposite of panic, the tightly held control of a person who needs to understand before they react. She goes through all 12 photographs. She sets the phone down gently, which is the thing that tells me more than anything else, because Nadia is not a gentle phone setter. She puts things down like she means it. Where, she says. Server room. Last night. The terminal was on. Who else has access to that terminal? Anyone with admin credentials. Me, you, Theo, our IT contractor, and whoever set up the infrastructure 2 years ago. She opens her laptop. She types something I can't see from across the table. She turns the screen partially toward me and I see she has pulled up the Foundation's donor database. She pulls a second window alongside it, public corporate filings, the kind you access through the State Business Registry. Monarch Gate, she says. Monarch Gate, I say. She types. She reads. She types again with the focused speed of someone following a thread they have already partly unraveled. I watch her and I don't say anything because there is nothing to say while she is doing this and because I spent last night lying in Roman's bed with this information and I know what the shape of it feels like and I am not ready to say it out loud to another person yet. Saying it out loud to another person will make it real in a way that 12 photographs and 1 sleepless night have not quite managed yet. 4 minutes pass. 7. 12. The conference room is quiet enough that I can hear the street outside and someone on the main floor of the office running copies. At 18 minutes Nadia says, without looking up, Monarch Gate has 2 registered officers. No listed employees. She pauses. The registered address is a UPS store in Paramus, New Jersey. I knew this was coming. I have been braced for it since I sat down. It still lands somewhere low and solid in my chest. A UPS store, I say. Unit 4 of a commercial mail service on Route 17. She looks up at me now. It is a shell company, Eden. There is no operation. There are no staff. There is no office. It is a name on a piece of paper attached to a bank account. I nod. That's not the worst part, she says. I did not think it was. She turns the laptop fully toward me. On the screen is a side-by-side comparison she has built in the last 20 minutes that I could not have put together as fast if I'd been trying. On the left, the Foundation's publicly filed tax returns, the Form 990s that every nonprofit submits annually and that anyone can access because transparency is the price of the tax exemption, which I have always believed in completely. On the right, the transaction logs from my photographs, the incoming funds tagged to our general account. The numbers on the left and the numbers on the right do not match. The donations aren't showing up in the public filings, I say. They are showing up somewhere, Nadia says. Just not where they should be. Someone built a second accounting layer inside our financial system. A shadow ledger that sits underneath our standard reporting. The money comes in, it gets absorbed into this secondary structure, and what surfaces in our official records is a version that has been cleaned and recategorized. She stops. Breathes. Whoever did this knew our system from the inside. They knew our filing protocols, our account structure, our audit cycles. They knew exactly where to put something so it would not be seen in a routine review. The room is very quiet. I think about Roman's study. The clear desk. The books in the order they changed how he thought. The hard drive labeled backup that is never plugged in. I think about 2 years of dinners and Sunday mornings and him testing the travel mug for 6 hours before he gave it to me because he wanted to be sure. How long has it been running, I say. Based on what I can see here, at least 8 months. Possibly longer. I'd need a forensic accountant to trace the full depth of it. She closes the laptop. She puts both hands flat on the table in front of her and looks at them for a moment, which is something Nadia does when she is organizing what she is about to say in a way that will not blow the walls out. Then she looks up at me. Eden. Someone with administrative access to our financial systems built a parallel accounting structure that has been processing millions of dollars through this foundation in a way that does not appear in any public record. This is not a bookkeeping error. This is not a software glitch. She pauses. You understand what I'm telling you? I understand, I say. Your name is on every filing, she says. Every quarterly report. Every document that connects this foundation to its financial activity. I know. If this is what it looks like. I know, Nadia. She stops. She looks at me. We have had 11 years of conversations in this look, entire exchanges that happen without words because we have known each other long enough that the words are sometimes just the sound underneath what the eyes already said. She knows I haven't slept. She knows I spent last night in his apartment. She knows I talked to him on the phone this morning and said I miss you and laughed at his story and said nothing about any of this. She says it very quietly. The way you say the thing that needs to be said even though the saying of it will change the room permanently. Tell me how much you love him. I look at her hands flat on the table. I look at the closed laptop. I look at the lock on the conference room door and the window behind Nadia's head with the gray November sky outside it, the sky that has been considering coming down all morning and still hasn't made up its mind. I don't answer. The silence sits between us and we both let it, because we are two women who have known each other long enough to know that some silences are not empty. Some silences are the fullest thing in the room. This one holds everything I cannot say yet, how much, how deep, how completely I handed this man the most unguarded version of myself and let him memorize it, and how none of that changes what is on my camera roll, and how both of those things are true at the same time and I do not yet know what to do with a truth that has two sides that cut in opposite directions. Nadia doesn't push. She picks up her coffee. She takes a drink. She puts it down and looks out the window with me and she waits, because that is what she does when she has asked the question that matters most, she waits and lets it work. Outside, the sky finally makes its decision. It starts to rain. Chapter 4. Roman comes home. I clean the apartment before he gets home, which is a thing I have never done before and a thing I notice myself doing with the specific awareness of someone watching their own behavior from a short distance away. I wipe down the kitchen counter that is already clean. I straighten the blanket on the couch that is already straight. I move a book from one side of the coffee table to the other and then move it back. I am not cleaning. I am doing something with my hands so that they are not idle, because idle hands in an empty apartment at 7:30 on a Saturday evening will pick up a phone and open a camera roll, and I have looked at those 12 photographs enough times this week to have memorized the reference codes. Roman's flight landed at 4. He texted from the car. He said an hour, maybe 90 minutes depending on traffic from JFK, which in November on a Saturday could mean anything. I said okay. I put my phone face down on the counter and I washed a mug that was already clean, and I thought about what Nadia said in the conference room on Friday. Tell me how much you love him. And then I thought about what I didn't say back, and what the not saying meant, and whether not saying it was honesty or cowardice or the specific kind of self-protection that looks like the same thing. I hear his key in the lock at 7. Frustrating, he says, chopping something without looking up. The Meridian deal has two parties who both want the same concession and neither will move first. I've been in rooms with both of them separately for 4 days trying to manufacture a compromise they will each believe they originated. He shakes his head slightly. It's theater. I'm good at theater. I'm tired of being good at theater. You could just tell them both to move, I say. I could, he says. And then neither of them would. He looks up briefly. Sometimes the only way to get two stubborn people to do the right thing is to let them believe it was their idea. I file this away without letting it show anywhere on my face. How was the foundation this week, he says. He is back to chopping. Fine, I say. Audit prep. Site visits. Usual. Bronx waitlist still bad. Still bad. He nods. He moves to the stove and the sound of oil in a hot pan fills the kitchen, and he reaches up to the spice shelf without looking, the same way he reached for my wine glass without looking the first night I was here, because he has memorized the location of everything he cares about and does not need to check. It used to make me feel claimed in a way that I thought was romantic. Right now it makes me think about what else he has memorized without telling me. Roman, I say. I keep my voice even. Light. The voice of a woman asking about something she is only mildly curious about. Our legal counsel was looking at the donor structure this week for the audit prep. She had a question about how some of the Calder Holdings donations are categorized. The subsidiary donations specifically. He stirs something. What kind of question? Just categorization. Whether the subsidiaries that donate independently require separate acknowledgement letters from the parent company donations. For the 990 filing. I pause. There was one, Monarch Gate, I think. She wanted to know whether it's a charitable vehicle or an operational subsidiary. The stirring doesn't stop. His shoulders don't change. He reaches for the pan handle with the same unhurried movement and tilts it slightly and says, without looking at me, it's an operational subsidiary. She can categorize it as a standard corporate donation. 10 words. Maybe 12. Then he reaches for the salt. I look at the back of his head. 2 years. I have sat across from this man at dinner tables and in boardroom lobbies and in cars going to airports and in bed at 2 in the morning when neither of us could sleep, and I have listened to him talk about business the way some people listen to music, not always following every technical line but feeling the shape of it, the rhythm of how his mind moves through a problem. Roman explaining something he built is Roman at his most unguarded. He leans into it. He uses his hands. He asks if you're following, and before you can answer he's already 3 steps further because the momentum of his own thinking carries him. I once asked him a single question about the Meridian deal structure at a dinner party and he talked for 40 minutes and only stopped because the dessert course arrived and embarrassed him slightly. He just answered a question about one of his subsidiaries in 10 words and went back to the salt. I look at the counter in front of me. I look at the ring. Great, I say. I'll let her know. He serves dinner 20 minutes later and it is good, genuinely good, the kind of food that requires real skill and attention, and we eat at the kitchen island the way we usually do because neither of us bothers with the dining table when it's just the two of us. He tells me about a restaurant in Dubai where he ate alone on Wednesday. He tells me the story about the driver I already heard on the voice note, and I laugh at the right places because I have not told him I listened to it 3 times. He asks about Darius, whether the essay got any further. He asks about the board meeting, whether the quarterly strategy Lyra presented was workable. He is so present and so warm and so completely the man I have been eating dinner with for 2 years that I spend most of the meal in a low-level bewilderment at how two things this contradictory can occupy the same space at the same time. After dinner he washes the pan. I dry it. We work in the kitchen together in the easy silence of people who have learned each other's rhythms, and I hand him things and he hands me things, and for about 4 minutes it feels completely ordinary, which is the most disorienting 4 minutes of my week. He goes to his bag before we move to the couch. I almost forgot, he says, and I hear him unzipping something, the sound of him moving through his bag with the particular focused rummaging of someone looking for one specific thing. Then he comes back to the kitchen and he puts something on the counter in front of me. It is a scarf. Dark green, the specific shade of green the first once described as the color of the inside of a forest, which is a pretentious thing to say about a color, but I said it and he was there and apparently he retained it. It is from a shop on a street in a neighborhood in London that I read about in a magazine article 8 months ago and mentioned to him in passing, a single sentence. We were in a car going somewhere, because the article described the textiles, and I said out loud, almost to myself, I want to go to that street someday. Just that. One sentence 8 months ago. He found the shop. In Dubai there is apparently a buyer he works with who sources things from specific European retailers, and he asked her, and she found it, and he carried it home in his bag through an 11.5-hour flight because I said one sentence 8 months ago. I pick it up. I don't say anything for a moment. The color's right, he says, watching me. Not proud of himself. Just checking. Making sure he got it right, because getting it right is the point for him, not the credit for trying. The color is exactly right, I say. He nods. Satisfied in the quiet way. He pours us both water and moves to the couch, and I follow him, and I sit beside him with the scarf still in my hands and the city outside the tall windows doing what it always does, going on without us, floor after floor of light against the dark. He puts his arm around me. I lean into him. His heartbeat under my ear is slow and steady, the heart of a man who is genuinely tired and genuinely home and genuinely at ease, and I lie against his chest and I hold the scarf and I listen to him breathe and slow down, the specific unwinding of a body releasing a week it has been braced through. The room goes quiet. Not silent. The city is never silent. But quiet in the way of two people who have stopped performing the evening and are just inside it, and the particular quality of this quiet, the warmth of it, the weight of his arm, the smell of him and the green scarf in my hands and his heart going slow and even beneath my ear, all of it presses against the thing I have been carrying all week and makes it heavier rather than lighter. Because this is real. Whatever else is true, this is also real, and I do not know yet what you do when two real things cannot both survive. He is asleep in 11 minutes. I know because his breathing changes and his arm gets heavier and the slight tension he always carries in his jaw when he's awake goes out of it. I lie against him in the dark and I look at the city and I think. Not about what to do. Not yet. Just about the shape of what I am inside, this woman in this room with this man and a scarf that cost more than one sentence deserved and 12 photographs on her phone and a conference room conversation that ended in rain. I am deciding something. I don't know what yet. But something has shifted in me tonight in the specific quiet of his heartbeat under my ear, something has moved from the place where you still have choices to the place where you have already made one without fully knowing when it happened. The scarf is still in my hands. His arm is heavy across my back. Outside, the city counts its lights. I stay very still and I let myself feel the full weight of loving someone you are no longer sure you can trust, which is one of the heaviest things a person can carry, and I carry it, and I do not wake him. Tomorrow I am going to find a forensic accountant. Chapter 5. Plot point 1, she makes the choice. The word I have been avoiding all week is laundering. I know this word. I am not naive and I am not someone who came to the nonprofit sector without understanding that money moves through it in ways that are not always clean, that charitable infrastructure gets used sometimes as cover for things that would not survive exposure to honest light. I have read the cases. I have sat in compliance training rooms and listened to lawyers explain what to watch for, and I have thought, every single time, not us, not Luminary, because I built this foundation on the specific belief that if you are rigorous and transparent and careful enough, the wrong people cannot get inside it. I was rigorous. I was transparent. I was careful. It was not enough. The forensic accountant's name is Grace O'Yelleran, and I found her through a college friend who works in white-collar litigation in Chicago and has no connection to Roman's World, to Calder Holdings, to anyone in the ecosystem of wealth and influence I have been living inside for 2 years. I called my Chicago friend from a coffee shop on Sunday using the rationale that coffee shops are loud enough that a phone call does not carry, and I said I needed a referral for a forensic accountant in New York, someone excellent and discreet, and he gave me Grace's name without asking why, and I did not tell him why, and we talked for 4 more minutes about normal things, and I hung up and sat with my coffee and looked at the street outside and thought, this is the first decision in a sequence that does not end somewhere I can fully see yet. I email Grace from a personal account I made 6 years ago for a mentorship program that I have barely used since. I tell her I have a hypothetical situation I'd like to walk through regarding nonprofit financial structures. I tell her I have documentation. I tell her I can be available whenever she has time this week. She replies in 40 minutes and says Tuesday at 2, gives me an address in Midtown, and signs off with nothing but her name. I tell Roman I have a lunch meeting running long on Tuesday. He says okay and asks if I want him to have dinner ready, and I say yes please, and I kiss him on the way out the door, and the kiss is real, which is the thing that has been making this week so extraordinarily difficult to navigate. Nothing I feel for him has changed. I keep waiting for the love to curdle into something easier to work with, something with an edge that would make the decisions cleaner, and it will not cooperate. Grace O'Yelleran's office is on the 31st floor of a building on 52nd Street, and everything about it says careful and private, no receptionist in the waiting area, just a keypad and a frosted glass door and a small printed card that says O'Yelleran Financial Forensics in a font that has never needed to advertise. She opens the door herself at 2 on the dot. She is 50-something with close-cropped hair and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, and the particular energy of a woman who has spent decades inside financial crime cases and has stopped being surprised by any of it, which I find both reassuring and quietly terrifying. Miss Caldwell, she says. Thank you for seeing me quickly, I say. She steps back and lets me in and closes the door, and we sit across from each other at a table that has nothing on it except a legal pad and a pen. And she looks at me the way people look at you when they are about to hear something they have already partially guessed. You said hypothetical, she says. I did, I say. You can keep saying hypothetical if it makes the conversation easier, she says. It won't change what I'm looking at. I put my phone on the table. I open the camera roll. I slide it across. She picks it up. She looks at the first photograph, and her face does what Nadia's face did. A very controlled stillness, the expression of a professional encountering something that confirms a category of thing she has seen before. She goes through all 12 photographs. She sets the phone down and she picks up her pen and she writes something on the legal pad and turns it face down before I can see it. Tell me about the organization, she says. Nonprofit, I say. Education and housing services. New York City. $40 million annual operating budget. 6 years in operation. Your role. Executive Director and Founder. She writes something. And the entity sending the funds shown in these transaction logs. What do you know about it? It's a subsidiary of a larger conglomerate, I say. Registered in New Jersey. I've been unable to find any employees or operational activity associated with it. How long has it been sending funds into the organization? 8 months that I can document. Possibly longer. She nods. She writes. She is quiet for a moment and then she says, the transaction log in photograph 3. The reference codes on the incoming wires. Can you tell me how those codes correspond to your standard donor intake process? I look at the photograph on my phone. They don't, I say. Our intake codes follow a specific format. These don't match that format. Correct, she says. They match a different format. A routing pattern. She pauses, and in the pause she picks up her pen and sets it down again, a single small gesture that is the most emotion she has shown since I walked in. Ms. Caldwell, I want to ask you a direct question and I'd like you to consider answering it directly even though you came here to discuss a hypothetical. I look at her. Is the executive director of this organization aware of the source of these funds, she says. No, I say. Was she ever aware? No. She looks at me for a moment. Then she nods once, the kind of nod that is not agreement but acknowledgement. She is noting my answer and moving forward. All right, she says. What follows is 45 minutes that I will spend a long time afterward trying to fully metabolize. She walks me through the transaction logs the way a doctor walks you through a scan, pointing at things, naming them, explaining what they indicate. Her voice is even throughout. She does not editorialize. She does not appear to judge. She simply tells me what she sees with the precision of someone who has been trained to describe financial crime the way a pathologist describes cause of death, not with feeling, but with absolute accuracy. The word she uses, the first time she uses it, is layering. This is a textbook example of the second phase in a money laundering operation, she says. The first phase is placement, getting illicit funds into the financial system. The second phase is layering, which is what you're looking at here. The funds are moved through multiple transactions, multiple legitimate-looking structures, to separate them from their origin. The goal is to make it impossible to trace the money back to wherever it came from. She taps the photograph. Your organization is the clean layer. The funds come in tagged as charitable donations. They move through your operational ledgers and your reporting structure. What emerges on the other side is a documented record of charitable expenditure by a legitimate nonprofit, which makes the source funds appear to have a lawful origin. I hear all of this. I sit in the chair across from her and I hear every word and I feel them land in the specific way that words land when you already knew what they would say and you needed someone outside yourself to say them anyway so that the knowing became real. The organization's director, I say. With her name on the quarterly filings. Grace O'Yelleran looks at me steadily. Is legally connected to every transaction documented in those logs, she says. Signing a financial report is, in the eyes of a federal prosecutor, an attestation. It means the signatory affirms the accuracy and completeness of the reported information. She pauses. If this were to become the subject of a federal investigation, the director of a nonprofit through which funds of this nature have been processed would be a person of significant interest. Regardless of what she knew or didn't know. Could she be charged, I say. She is quiet for a beat. In the current federal climate around financial crime and nonprofit misuse, yes, she says. Prosecutors have charged nonprofit executives on the basis of reckless disregard, meaning they didn't know but they should have known. Given the scale of these transactions and the duration, the argument that a diligent executive director should have detected the secondary ledger would not be difficult to construct. The room does not move. Nothing happens. I sit in the chair and the city goes on outside the 31st floor window and Grace O'Yelleran's legal pad sits face down on the table between us and I breathe in and I breathe out and I am completely, perfectly still. One more question, I say. Yes. The secondary ledger. The person who built it. How much would they need to know about the organization's internal systems to construct something like that without detection? She picks up her pen. Sets it down again. They would need administrative access to the financial infrastructure. Familiarity with the audit cycle and reporting protocols. Enough technical knowledge to insert a parallel accounting layer without triggering the organization's standard reconciliation process. She looks at me. This was not done from outside. Whoever built this was either inside the organization or had someone inside who gave them the access and the information they needed. I pick up my phone from the table. I thank her. I stand up and I shake her hand and she holds it for a second longer than a handshake requires and she says, Miss Caldwell. Whatever this hypothetical turns out to be, get a lawyer before you do anything else. A good one. I know, I say. Not corporate, she says. Criminal defense. I look at her. She looks back at me with the flat, clear look of a woman who has sat across from enough people in enough conference rooms to know exactly what kind of trouble walks through her door. I take the elevator down alone. The lobby is busy the way Midtown lobbies are at 3:30 on a Tuesday, people moving in every direction with the particular focused urgency of a city that does not stop because your life is rearranging itself. I walk through it and out to the street and I stand on the sidewalk for a moment in the cold and I look at nothing in particular and I feel everything I have been keeping carefully managed and compartmentalized since last Thursday night in the server room rise up in my chest and press against the inside of my ribs. I do not let it out. My car is in a garage 2 blocks away. I walk there. I get in. I sit in the driver's seat in the dim concrete of the parking structure and I hold the steering wheel with both hands and I look at the wall in front of me and I let 60 seconds pass in which I feel the full size of what I am inside, the legal exposure, the shadow ledger, the name on the filings, the ring on my finger, the scarf in the color of the inside of a forest, the heartbeat I fell asleep against 4 nights ago thinking I was safe. 60 seconds. Then I pick up my phone. Nadia answers on the second ring. I can hear from the background that she's still at the office, which means she has been waiting. Get a lawyer, I say. Not a corporate lawyer. A criminal defense attorney. Someone good and someone who has never done any work for Calder Holdings or anyone connected to it. I pause. Don't use my phone again for this. Or yours. Find a way. Silence. Then, very quietly, Eden. I'm fine, I say. You're not. I will be, I say. Get the lawyer. I'll call you tomorrow. I hang up. I sit in the car. The parking garage is quiet except for the distant sound of a car on another level and something mechanical cycling somewhere in the building's infrastructure. I sit in the middle of it with my phone in my lap and both hands still on the wheel, and I look at the concrete wall and I do the thing I have been doing my whole life. When the floor drops out, I find the next thing. Not all the things. Not the whole impossible shape of where this ends. Just the next thing, and then the one after that, and then the one after that, because that is how you move through something you cannot see the end of without losing your mind in the trying. The next thing is dinner. I drive back to the penthouse. I park. I take the elevator up. Roman is home already, earlier than I expected, sitting on the couch with his laptop open and his shoes off and that low-grade tiredness he's been carrying since Dubai still around his eyes. He looks up when I come in and smiles in the way that is just for me, the smile he doesn't give the room, the one that is quiet and specific and mine, or what I thought was mine. You're back, he says. Meeting ran long, I say, because I told him it would. Hungry. Starving, I say, and I put my bag down and I take off my coat and I go to the kitchen and I start pulling things out of the refrigerator for dinner, and he comes to stand beside me after a moment the way he does, close enough that our arms almost touch, watching me work the way he watches me sometimes when he thinks I haven't noticed, with that particular attention that has always made me feel seen. I make pasta. It takes 40 minutes and I talk to him while I make it, about the foundation, about Darius, about a funding call I have in the morning, and he sits at the island and talks back and the conversation is warm and ordinary and moves exactly the way our evenings move, and I plate the food and we sit across from each other at the kitchen island and I watch him eat and I smile at the right moments and I listen when he speaks. And underneath every single second of it, in the part of me that has gone very quiet and very cold and very clear, I am planning. Not what to feel. Not how to survive loving someone who has done what I believe he has done. I don't have time for that yet. What I am planning is simpler and more urgent and more frightening than anything I have built before. I am planning how to protect the foundation. How to protect the 93 families on the Bronx wait list. How to protect Amara's drawing on the wall. How to protect my own name and my own freedom and the 6 years of everything I made from $30,000 and a post-it note. And then, underneath even that, in a place I am not fully ready to look at directly yet, I am planning something else. Something that came to me in the 60 seconds I sat in the parking garage with both hands on the wheel. Something my mother's voice in the back of my head is calling, quietly, the third path. Not silence. Not destruction. Something else entirely. Roman refills my water without being asked. He tells me a story about something that happened in a meeting that makes me laugh once, genuinely, because even now he can do that, even now with everything I know sitting between us like a weight neither of us has named, he can make me laugh. I look at him across the table and I feel the full specific pain of loving someone you have decided to outsmart. I smile at him. I finish my dinner. I start to plan. Chapter 6. The third player. I have a routine and I have had it for 4 years and I have never considered it a vulnerability until this Wednesday morning when a man I have never seen before falls into step beside me on West 116th Street and says my name like he already knows the answer to every question he hasn't asked yet. Miss Caldwell. Not a question. Not an introduction. Just my name, dropped into the space between one step and the next with the flat certainty of someone who has been waiting for this moment long enough that the waiting itself has become a kind of confidence. I stop walking. He stops too. Not in front of me, not blocking me, just beside me on the sidewalk the way someone stands when they want you to understand that they are not a threat while making it impossible to ignore the fact that they could be. He is somewhere in his mid-40s, medium height, wearing a coat that is practical rather than expensive, and he has the particular stillness of a man who has spent years in rooms where moving too fast means losing something. His face is unremarkable in the way that faces are sometimes unremarkable on purpose. You would not remember him in a crowd. I think that is deliberate. I think you have the wrong person, I say, because this is what you say, because I need 3 seconds to decide what comes after it. I don't, he says. He is not aggressive. His voice is level and quiet and has the patience of a very long project in it. Eden Caldwell, Executive Director of the Luminary Foundation. You live in a penthouse on 57th Street that belongs to Roman Calder, CEO of Calder Holdings. You take the subway to work most days, but you walk to this coffee shop on Wednesday mornings before your 9 o'clock staff call because the coffee here is better than the coffee at your office and Wednesdays are hard. He pauses. You've been coming here for 3 years. I look at him. He looks back at me and there is nothing threatening in his expression and nothing warm either. He is simply present, fully and deliberately present, the way something is present when it has been there for a while and is finally letting you see it. Who are you? I say. He reaches into his coat pocket and produces a card and holds it out to me. I don't take it immediately. I look at it first the way you look at something before you pick it up when you're not sure what picking it up commits you to. Detective Marcus Reed. Financial Crimes Unit. A badge number. A phone number. A direct line written in pen below the printed one, which means the printed one is not the one he wants me to use. I take it. Detective, I say. Ms. Caldwell, he says again, and there is something in the repetition that is not politeness so much as precision. He is being careful. He is being very, very careful, which tells me more than the badge does. Careful men in this situation are men who cannot afford to get the approach wrong. I don't know why you'd need to speak with me, I say, and the sentence comes out steady and I am grateful for it, grateful for the specific skill I seem to have developed this week for keeping my voice at a temperature that does not match what my chest is doing. You will, he says. I've been building a case against Calder Holdings for 2 years. Financial crimes. Multiple fronts, multiple instruments, multiple jurisdictions. He pauses, and the pause is timed, I realize, to let the scale of that land before he continues. The Luminary Foundation has appeared in our evidence. The street goes on around us. A woman walks past with a stroller. A delivery truck pulls up 20 feet away and the driver gets out with a dolly and starts unloading boxes with the noise and urgency of someone on a schedule. The city does not pause for this. It never does. In what capacity, I say. That's a conversation I'd like to have somewhere that isn't a sidewalk, he says. I'd like to know what capacity, I say, and there is an edge under it now, not fear, something that came up through the fear and hardened. He is standing on the street outside my coffee shop on a Wednesday morning telling me my foundation has appeared in his evidence and he wants to have the conversation somewhere else, on his terms and his timeline, and I have spent the last week doing things on other people's terms and timelines without their knowledge and I am not doing it knowingly. He looks at me and something in his assessment of me shifts slightly. Just slightly. The recalibration of a man who prepared for one kind of response and is getting another. As a vehicle, he says. We believe funds have been processed through the Foundation's financial structure as part of a money movement operation connected to Calder Holdings. We believe this was done without the Foundation director's knowledge. He stops. I'm not here to threaten you, Ms. Caldwell. I'm here because the nature of what we're building means that people who are not the target sometimes get caught in the architecture. I'd rather talk to you before that happens than after. I look at him. He looks at me. The delivery truck driver wheels his dolly up onto the sidewalk between us briefly, excuses himself without making eye contact, and moves on. We wait for him to pass and then we are looking at each other again on the same patch of sidewalk as if nothing interrupted it. What do you want? I say. Not today, he says. Today I just wanted you to know I exist. He nods toward the card in my hand. The number in pen is mine directly. The printed number goes to an office that logs calls. Use the one in pen when you're ready. He takes a single step back, putting space between us that feels like a deliberate thing, a signal that this is him leaving rather than you leaving, and he says, "Enjoy your coffee, Miss Caldwell." Then he turns and walks north on 116th Street at a pace that is unhurried and even, the pace of a man who got exactly what he came for. I stand on the sidewalk. I look at the card. It is a standard issue card, the kind that costs nothing to print, and it is slightly warm from being in his pocket, and it has a handwritten phone number on it in blue pen, and it is the most dangerous object I have currently touched with my bare hands, which is saying something because yesterday I printed 12 photographs at a drugstore on 125th Street using the most anonymous method I could construct, and those are currently between 2 pages of a cookbook on the 4th shelf of my apartment kitchen. I cannot put this card in my purse because my purse has been in Roman's penthouse and the penthouse has people in it sometimes who are not me. I cannot throw it away on this street because there is a black car parked across from me that I have not looked at directly yet but that I became aware of in the peripheral way you become aware of something that is too still in a moving environment, and I do not know whose it is and I do not want to. I cannot stand here holding it either. I fold the card once and I push it into the inside of my left shoe, against the arch of my foot, which is an absurd thing to do and also the only thing I can do right now with the car across the street and the Wednesday morning going on around me in total indifference. I go into the coffee shop. I order my coffee. I pay for it. I stand at the pickup counter and I look at my phone and I do not look out the window. I breathe in and I breathe out. I think about what he said. 2 years. He has been building this case for 2 years, which means he started before I knew Roman, which means whatever Roman is inside of, it is not new, it did not begin when I came into his life, it was already there and running and producing evidence that a federal detective has been collecting and cataloging for 2 years while I was falling in love with the man at the center of it. 2 years. Roman and I met at a charity event. He came to a luminary gala and he bid on a dinner package in the silent auction, and afterward he found me near the bar and said, "I bid on the dinner because I wanted to meet you, not because I need the tax deduction," which made me laugh in the surprised, involuntary way that you laugh when someone says the honest thing instead of the smooth thing. I thought it was the most direct introduction I had ever received from a man who had no reason to be anything but smooth. Now I am standing in my coffee shop with a detective's card inside my shoe and thinking about whether the gala was the first time or whether the gala was a plan. The barista calls my name. I take my coffee. I walk back out onto the sidewalk. The black car is still there. I know because I can see it in my peripheral vision as I turn south toward the subway, and I am walking at the pace of someone who has somewhere to be and is not looking at anything in particular, and I do not turn my head, and I do not slow down. But I am aware of it the way I am aware of everything this week, with a new and exhausting precision, my attention snagged on things it would have slid past before. The car does not move. I keep walking. I turn the corner onto Broadway and I stop in the first doorway that gives me a sight line back to the street without putting me in full view of it. Old habit. My mother used to say, if something feels wrong on a street, don't just keep walking. Stop and look. Most of the time it's nothing. The times it isn't, you'll be glad you stopped. The black car has tinted windows. It is parked half in a loading zone in the way that says the driver is not concerned about a ticket, which means either arrogance or a plate that makes it irrelevant. From this distance and this angle I can see the front passenger window and the shape of someone in the seat behind it. The someone is not moving. The someone is looking in the direction I came from, which is the direction of the coffee shop, which is the direction where I just stood on a sidewalk for 4 minutes talking to a federal detective. I look at the shape behind the glass for a moment. The window doesn't come down. The car doesn't move. I turn back onto Broadway and I walk toward the subway with my coffee in one hand and my phone in the other and Detective Marcus Reed's card pressing into the arch of my left foot with every step, and I think about what it means that someone else was watching that conversation. I think about the black car and the tinted window and the shape of a person who stayed very still while I talked to a detective who has been building a case for 2 years. I think about Roman, who will call me in approximately 40 minutes to say good morning the way he does every morning, in that low, half-awake voice that I have never once managed to be cold toward. I think about the card in my shoe. I think, there are more people in this room than I knew about. And then I think, which means there are more walls to watch. I go down into the subway. The train comes. I get on. I find a seat and I put my coffee between my feet and I look at my hands in my lap, at the ring catching the fluorescent light of the subway car, and I feel the card against my foot with every small shift of weight, a constant low pressure, a reminder. Somewhere above me, on a street in Harlem, a black car with tinted windows sits unmoving while the person inside it watches me disappear into the ground. I don't know his name yet. I don't know that he is the reason everything is about to get significantly worse. Chapter 7. She goes looking in places she wasn't meant to find. The first thing you need to understand about Roman Calder is that he does not hide things carelessly. I have known this about him since the third month of our relationship, when I watched him clean out his briefcase on a Sunday evening with the methodical attention of a man who considers disorder a form of dishonesty. Every item had a reason for being there and a place it returned to, and if something no longer had a reason, it was removed. No accumulation. No sentimentality about objects. He keeps what he uses and uses what he keeps, and the things that matter most to him are always exactly where they were the last time you looked. This is not the behavior of a careless man. Which means if there are things in this apartment that he does not want found, I will not find them by looking for them directly. I will find them by learning the shape of what is missing. By understanding the architecture of the space he has built around himself well enough to identify the gaps, the places where a man like Roman would keep something if he were keeping something, and what it means that those places are empty. I start on a Thursday evening while he is at a dinner he cannot cancel, a quarterly thing with investors that runs until 10 and reliably puts him in a specific kind of tired when he comes home, present but not observant, the tiredness of performance rather than labor. I have 3 hours. I am not searching. I am studying. I walk through the penthouse the way I have walked through it for 8 months, slowly and without urgency, and I let myself see it differently. Not as home. As information. His bedroom closet first, because I know it well, and knowing it well means I know what it looked like before and can compare it to now. His suits in order of how recently he wore them. Shirts by color in a sequence that seems aesthetic but I figured out 6 months ago corresponds to the days of the week he finds hardest. Dark colors on Mondays and Tuesdays when the week is heavy with meetings. Lighter ones toward the end when it has thinned. The shelf above has 3 boxes I have opened before, one has cufflinks, one has watches, one has the specific kind of miscellaneous objects that accumulate in the lives of organized men because even they cannot categorize everything. I open the miscellaneous box and I go through it item by item and I put everything back exactly where it was and none of it tells me anything new. The study. I stand in the doorway the way I stood 3 weeks ago the night I came home from the server room, looking for something in the objects of him. Tonight I go inside and I do it properly. I start at the left side of the room and I move clockwise and I look at everything with the specific question not of what is here but of what is not here that should be. The desk has 3 drawers. The top one has the usual things, pens, paper clips, a small stapler he uses about twice a year, a tube of hand lotion I bought him once as a joke because his hands get dry in winter and he refused to buy any himself. The second drawer has files. Current project briefs, the kind of thing he reviews at home on evenings when the office day didn't leave room for detail work. I do not touch these. I note their presence and move on. The third drawer locks. I have seen him open it once, months ago, when he was looking for something and did not find it here and moved on without comment. I remember thinking it was locked and then forgetting about it because the moment passed without significance. Now I crouch in front of it and I look at the lock, which is a small barrel lock of the kind you find in desk furniture that costs this much, and I think about what a man like Roman Calder keeps in a locked drawer. I do not have the key. I do not try to open it. Instead I sit back on my heels and I think about the one time I saw him open it, and I think about what he was looking for, and I think about the expression on his face when he didn't find it there. It was not frustration. It was the brief and practiced neutrality of a man who found the expected absence of something he already knew was not in that drawer, which means he opened it for another reason, which means the drawer's purpose is not what it appears to be. I try something. I pull the drawer. It opens. It is not locked right now. It was locked the one time I saw him open it, which means he locks it sometimes and not others. I look inside. There is a phone charger. A small notebook with a pen clipped to the cover. 3 business cards from other people, fanned slightly. A set of keys on a plain ring with no fob. These are not the things a man locks a drawer to protect. These are the things a man leaves in a drawer to be found if the drawer is searched. These are the answer to the question of what is in the locked drawer, placed here to satisfy the question so that the question stops. The real contents of this drawer were never here, or have not been here for a long time. This drawer is the absence of a thing wearing the costume of a thing. I put it back exactly as I found it. I stand up and I look at the bookshelf. The books in the order they changed how he thought. The small photograph of us near the window. The hard drive on the third shelf, labeled backup in his handwriting, sitting in the same position it has occupied every time I have looked at it. Never plugged in. Always present. I have assumed it was what it says it is, a backup drive, the kind of redundant storage habit that careful people maintain. Now I look at it differently. I do not touch it. I note it. I go to the kitchen. I go through the pantry not because I expect to find anything there but because I am being systematic, and systematic means everywhere. I go through the hallway closet. I look at the space under the bed, which has a storage drawer built in that Roman uses for extra bedding and which contains exactly that. I look at the guest room he uses occasionally as a second office, which has less of him in it than the main study but has a filing cabinet I have never opened. The filing cabinet is unlocked. It has tax records and insurance documents and property files for 3 addresses I know about and 1 I don't. A property in Connecticut. I photograph the address on my phone before I replace the file and close the cabinet. I photograph it and then I immediately feel the specific chill of having just done something that cannot be undone, used my phone, my real phone, to document something in his apartment. I turn the phone over and I look at it. I delete the photograph. I write the address on the inside of my wrist in pen instead, pressing hard enough that it will last until I get it somewhere permanent. What I have by the time I hear the elevator at 9:48 is not evidence. It is a map of absences. A locked drawer that is not locked and contains nothing real. A hard drive that is always present and never used. A Connecticut address I didn't know about. And something else, something I have been carrying since 2 Sundays ago and have not fully examined until tonight. I noticed it the first Sunday 3 weeks ago without registering it as notable. Roman's phone was on the kitchen counter and the screen lit up with an incoming call and I glanced at it the way you glance at things, automatically, and I saw the name V. Just V, no last name, and I thought nothing of it because people have abbreviated contacts for many ordinary reasons. But last Sunday it lit up again at the same time, between 9 and 9:15, and Roman picked it up and said, "Give me a minute," to me in the living room and went to the study and closed the door. He was in there for 12 minutes. He came out looking the way he looks when he has been managing something that required effort to manage, composed, but composed the way a surface is composed after you have smoothed it by hand. I had said, "Everything okay?" He had said, "Work," and poured himself a glass of water and changed the subject. Every Sunday evening between 9 and 9:15. The study door closed. The face that he puts on when the management of something has cost him something. I have now catalogued enough absences and enough patterns that what I am holding is a shape. I cannot see the whole of it yet. But shapes become visible when you have enough of their edges. I hear his key in the lock and I am on the couch with a book when he comes in, the book I have been carrying in my bag for 2 weeks and have read approximately 40 pages of because I cannot concentrate on fiction right now with any consistency. He comes in with his jacket over his arm and the investor dinner tiredness around his eyes and he says hey and I say hey and he pours water and sits beside me and I lean into him exactly the way I have been leaning into him and we watch nothing in particular on the television for an hour and he falls asleep before 11. That night I start the log. I find a notebook in my bag, a small one I use for meeting notes, half filled already with things from foundation work, and I open to the back where there are blank pages and I write from back to front in handwriting small enough that you would need to hold it close to read it and know what you were looking at to understand it. I write dates. I write times. I write descriptions in language stripped down to the plainest possible form, nothing that would read as accusatory if found before I was ready. Just observations, just the pattern laid out in sequence so that I can look at it whole rather than in pieces. The locked drawer that is not locked. The hard drive that does not compute. The problem with calling Reed is every problem you would expect. My phone is not safe. His printed number logs the call. Going to him on his terms means entering a process I cannot control and cannot exit once I'm inside it. I think about this for 4 days. On the 4th day, a Tuesday, I walk into the lobby of the Langham Hotel on 5th Avenue because I am passing it and because I have a thought and because sometimes you have to act on a thought immediately before the sensible part of your brain makes the case against it. The lobby is grand and busy and has the anonymous warmth of a space designed to hold many people without belonging to any of them. I walk through it with purpose, the way you walk through spaces you don't belong in when you need to not be stopped, and I find what I am looking for near the bank of elevators on the far side of the lobby. A payphone. I stop in front of it. It is clean and functional and has the slightly apologetic quality of technology that knows it has been obsolete for a decade but has not yet been removed. I look at it for a moment and I think about how I know this works, the mechanics of it, whether the number I am about to call will show anything traceable on the other end, and I land on the answer which is not nothing but is significantly less than my personal cell and is the best option I currently have. I take Reed's card from the inside pocket of my bag, where I moved it from my shoe on the day he gave it to me. I look at the number in pen. I feed coins into the phone from the small pile of change I have been keeping in my coat pocket since Wednesday, which tells you something about the state of my week, that I have been carrying coins in my coat in November against the eventuality of needing a payphone. It rings twice. "Reed," he says. His voice is the same as the sidewalk, level, patient, already somewhere ahead of the present moment. "It's Eden Caldwell," I say. A pause. Short. "Miss Caldwell. I want to talk," I say. "But I have conditions." Another pause, and this one has a different quality. Not surprise. The careful recalibration of a man who prepared for one version of this call and is getting a better one. "I'm listening," he says. "Not on your terms," I say. "Not in your office or any federal building or anywhere that creates a record of my presence before I have legal representation in place. Not on my phone. The diner in Queens is the kind of place that has been exactly the same since 1987 and is proud of it. Laminate tables. Coffee that has been sitting since morning. A counter with 4 stools and a woman behind it who has the look of someone who has heard everything and remembered none of it, which is probably why Reed chose this place. Nobody in a diner like this is paying attention to the 2 people in the back booth. Nobody in a diner like this is paying attention to anything except their own plate. I get there first. I chose that deliberately, the way I have been choosing everything deliberately this week. Arriving before him means I see him come in, means I see whether he comes alone, means I have 30 seconds of observation before the conversation starts that he does not get in return. He comes in at 10 past the hour I named, alone, no coat despite the cold, the same practical energy as the sidewalk. He scans the room before he moves to the booth and his eyes find me and he nods once and comes over and sits down without ceremony. The waitress appears immediately. Reed orders coffee. I already have mine. We wait for her to leave. "You came alone," I say. "I did," he says. "How do I know that?" "You don't," he says. "Same way I don't know you didn't bring anyone." We're both making a calculation about whether the other person's word is worth anything yet. He wraps both hands around the coffee mug. The waitress sits down and looks at me across the table with the settled patience of a man who has done this exact kind of meeting enough times that the discomfort of it no longer registers. "Thank you for coming." "Don't thank me," I say. "I haven't agreed to anything." "Understood," he says. "Then tell me what you have." He does. He does it with the efficiency of someone who has been carrying this particular briefing for a long time and has rehearsed it down to its clearest form, the way you rehearse something when you know the moment to say it will finally come and you want to be ready. He doesn't use notes. He doesn't look away. He talks the way people talk when they have memorized something, not because they were told to but because they spent enough time with it that it became part of how they think. Calder Holdings, he says, has been functioning as a routing structure for an organization called the Ardent Group for approximately 4 years. The Ardent Group is international. It operates across 17 countries through what appear, on the surface, to be legitimate business enterprises, real estate development, technology infrastructure, philanthropic vehicles. The real business is money. Moving it, cleaning it, returning it to people who need it to appear lawful. The sources of the original funds span narcotics distribution networks in Eastern Europe, arms procurement channels in 3 conflict regions, and, he pauses here, briefly, the first pause in the whole delivery, human trafficking operations running through Southeast Asia and West Africa. I look at my coffee. I do not pick it up. "Human trafficking," I say. "Yes," he says. He says it without softening it and without leaning into it either, just places it in the conversation the way you place a fact that needs to be heard clearly. The funds that have been processed through the Luminary Foundation are connected, at their origin point, to those operations. Several steps removed through the layering structure. But connected. The diner goes on around us. Someone 2 tables over is arguing cheerfully with someone else about something that has nothing to do with anything in this booth. The coffee machine behind the counter makes a sound. The door opens and closes with cold air. "My foundation," I say. I hear how flat my voice is and I am glad for it. Children's education. Housing for families. My foundation has been processing money from people who traffic children. Yes, he says again. I sit with that. I let it be the size it actually is rather than managing it down into something I can function around, because some things need to be felt at their real size before you can do anything useful with them. This is one of those things. I sit in a vinyl booth in a diner in Queens and I feel the full weight of it, and I do not look away from read, and I do not let anything show on my face because showing it will not help anything, and there is no one in this booth who deserves my grief before I have finished understanding the situation. The foundation was selected specifically, I say. You told me that on the sidewalk. Yes. Why? He looks at me. That's the part one don't have yet, he says, and something in the way he says it tells me this bothers him more than the rest. Every other element of the Ardent Group's structure in the United States was chosen for purely operational reasons: scale, access, existing infrastructure. The foundation is different. It's smaller than their other vehicles. Less efficient for the volume they were moving. Someone chose it for a reason that isn't purely functional, and I haven't been able to establish what that reason is. I think about my mother. I think about make something real, eaten on a post-it note on a bathroom mirror. I think about whether there is a version of the reason that reaches back further than my relationship with Roman, and I do not say any of this because I am not ready to hand-read anything I'm not certain of. What do you want from me? I say. He puts both hands flat on the table. It is a gesture I am coming to recognize as his equivalent of opening a folder. It means he is about to move from context to specifics. 3 things, he says. First, access to the Foundation's internal financial systems. Specifically the secondary ledger and any documentation you can pull from the LF, OPS, INT, 77Q folder structure before whoever put it there realizes it's been found and clears it. You know about the folder, I say. We've had eyes on your server traffic for 6 weeks, he says, and does not apologize for it. We saw it appear. We couldn't access the contents without a warrant, and a warrant required more probable cause than we currently had, which required a witness. Which is why I'm talking to you. 6 weeks. He has been watching the Foundation's server traffic for 6 weeks. I file the specific code of this away and keep going. Second thing, I say. Documentation of the Monarch Gate entity. Incorporation chain, registered officers, any banking information you can legitimately access as the Foundation's executive director in the course of a routine audit inquiry. Nothing that requires you to go outside what your role allows. And the third. He looks at me steadily. Anything you can find on the origin of Monarch Gate's operating authority. Who gave the instruction to route funds through it? Who set up the relationship with the Foundation? He pauses. We believe that instruction came from inside Calder Holdings at a senior level. We have circumstantial support for that. We do not yet have documentation. The booth is quiet for a moment. And in exchange, I say. In exchange, he says, I will structure the prosecution in a way that categorizes you as a cooperative witness from the outset. Any charges that could attach to the Foundation's director based on the transactions processed through the secondary ledger will be excluded from the indictment. Your name will not appear as a target. Your Foundation will be characterized as a victim entity rather than a participant. He pauses. That's not a small thing, Ms. Caldwell. The DOJ has charged nonprofit executives in cases like this on far less than what your signature appears on. I know, I say. My forensic accountant was very clear. Something moves through his expression. Reassessment again, the same small recalibration I saw on the sidewalk. He did not know about Grace O'Yelleran, and he did not expect me to have already consulted one. You've been busy, he says. I've been careful, I say. There's a difference. He looks at me for a moment. There is, he agrees, and it sounds like something genuine, which is the first thing he said in this booth that doesn't feel like it's in service of a strategy. I'll think about it, I say. Ms. Caldwell. He sets his coffee down. I understand the instinct. But you don't actually have the time to think. The folder on your server has been there for 6 days. The person who put it there is going to check on it. When they find it's been accessed from the executive terminal at 9:47 on a Thursday night, they are going to move to protect it or remove it, and when they do, your window closes. I need what's in that folder before that happens, and I need to know you're positioned on the right side of this before the indictment moves forward, because once it moves I cannot restructure it. He looks at me with the flat clarity of a man who is not threatening me and knows the difference between that and urgency. This is not pressure. This is arithmetic. I look at him. I look at my coffee. I push the mug to the side of the table, a small deliberate movement, and I look back at Reed with the specific steadiness that I have been building all week out of everything I know and everything I am afraid of and everything I have decided to do with both of those things. Then I'll think fast, I say. He holds my gaze for a beat. And I see it, the thing I was watching for, the thing that tells me where the actual power in this conversation sits. His shoulders drop by a fraction. Not relief. The release of something he has been bracing for that did not happen. He was prepared for me to break or to bolt and I did neither, and he did not fully expect that, and now he is recalibrating again, and this time the recalibration goes deeper. Good. Let him recalibrate. I take money from my pocket and I put it on the table for my coffee and I stand up. He starts to rise and I say, "Stay," not unkindly, and he does. I put my coat on. I pick up my bag. I look at him once more across the table and I say, "I'll be in touch the same way as before. Don't approach me in public again." He nods. I walk out of the diner. The cold hits me on the sidewalk outside and I stand in it for a moment and I look at the street, at the ordinary Wednesday morning life of a Queens block, a woman locking up a laundromat, a man unloading bread from a van, a school bus making the particular grinding complaint of school buses everywhere. The normal world, going about its business in complete ignorance of the diner booth I just stood up from. I do not go to the foundation. I do not go back to Roman's penthouse. I take the subway to Lower Manhattan and I walk 4 blocks in the cold to the Manhattan City Clerk's office on Worth Street, which I have been to twice before in my professional life and which has the specific institutional quality of a building that processes large volumes of consequential paperwork with thorough indifference to the significance of any individual item. I take a number. I wait. When my number is called I go to the window and I tell the clerk I need to file incorporation documents for a new entity and I need the forms for a limited liability company and a non-profit application and the standard registered agent forms. She passes them through the window without looking at me, which is exactly what I want. I sit down at one of the long tables along the wall with a pen and the stack of forms in front of me and I begin to fill them out. The entity I am creating has been forming in the back of my mind for 3 days, the way plans form when you are asleep to them, not consciously, not in the orderly way of deliberate planning, but organically, piece by piece, the way a structure finds its shape when you have been thinking about its function long enough. I know what it is for. I know what it needs to do and what it needs to be able to hold and what legal form gives it the most flexibility with the least exposure. I write the name of it on the first line of the incorporation form. Caldwell Clean Infrastructure LLC. I write my name as the registered agent. My personal address, the apartment I kept when I moved into Roman's penthouse, the one I have been paying rent on for 8 months out of what felt like sentiment and what I now understand was instinct. My own address. My own entity. My own structure, separate from the foundation, separate from Calder Holdings, separate from every piece of architecture that someone else built and put my name on without my knowledge. Something built entirely by me, for a purpose entirely my own. I fill out every line with the steady attention of a woman who has been running a $40 million organization for 6 years and understands exactly what each box means and what the answers to it commit her to. The clerk at the window is processing someone else's paperwork. The fluorescent lights hum. Someone near the door coughs once and then is quiet. I think about Reed saying the Luminary Foundation was chosen specifically. I think about it for a reason that isn't purely functional. I think about my mother's maiden name. I think about the community fund she ran when I was small, the one she shut down when I was 10 without ever fully explaining why, the one she never spoke about in the years after, the one I filed in the category of things my mother had decided to leave behind. I think about the letter she left with the notary, the one I am not supposed to receive until I am 30, the one that is sitting in a law office somewhere in Brooklyn addressed to a version of me that my mother imagined would be older and further from all of this. I am 28. I am not older. But I am, as it turns out, not far from it at all. I finish the forms. I take them back to the window. I pay the filing fee in cash from the envelope I withdrew on Monday from an ATM 2 blocks from my apartment, not from Roman's neighborhood, not from a machine that would place me in any location connected to my usual movement. The clerk stamps the forms without ceremony and hands me a receipt and tells me processing takes 7 to 10 business days. Thank you, I say. She is already looking at the person behind me. I fold the receipt and put it in the inside pocket of my coat alongside the notebook, and I walk out into the cold, and I stand on Worth Street in Lower Manhattan with the city going on in every direction, and I feel, for the first time since the server room, something other than fear. It is not courage exactly. It is something quieter and more durable than courage. It is the specific sensation of a decision made completely, without reservation, without the part of you that keeps looking for a way out. I have made the decision. I am on the path. The path goes somewhere I cannot fully see yet, but I know its direction, and I know what I am carrying, and I know what I am willing to do to get where it ends. Reed thinks he is building a case against Roman Calder. He is. So am I. The difference is that when I am done, the thing I build will not end with the foundation in rubble and 93 families still on a waiting list and Amara's drawing taken off the wall because the organization that hung it there was swallowed by someone else's criminal prosecution. What I build will end differently. I button my coat and I start walking. Chapter 9. What Roman actually knows. My name is Roman Calder, and I have not slept past 4 in the morning in 14 months. I know the exact number because I know the exact night it started, which was a Tuesday in September 14 months ago, when Silas Voss came into my office at 7 in the evening with a folder and a face I had never seen on him before, not the CFO face, not the boardroom face, not even the face he uses when a deal goes badly. A different face entirely. The face of a man who has been holding something for too long and has finally decided that holding it alone is no longer possible. He put the folder on my desk. He said, "You need to read this before I say anything." I read it. It took me 22 minutes, and when I finished I closed it and I put both hands flat on my desk the way I do when I need to feel something solid under me, and I looked at the window, and I did not say anything for long enough that Silas shifted his weight from one foot to the other, which he never does, and said, "Roman." "How long?" I said. "The structure was in place before you took the company," he said. "Your father built it." I found evidence of the original architecture going back 6 years. 6 years. I had been CEO for 3. I had taken the company believing I understood what I was taking. I had spent 3 years making decisions based on financial reporting that was, I now understood, showing me a curated version of the company's activity rather than the whole of it. I had been running a building while someone else ran the basement, and I had not known the basement existed. "The foundation," I said. I said it the way you say something you need to hear yourself say to confirm you have actually read what you think you read. "The luminary foundation." "Yes," Silas said. "Eden's foundation." "Yes." I stood up from the desk. I walked to the window. I looked at the city, which was doing what it always does, going on, indifferent, floor after floor of light with no interest in the specific shape of what I was standing inside. I thought about Eden, who I had been seeing for 8 months at that point. Who I had been falling in love with in the deliberate and slightly terrified way that I fall into anything that matters, slowly and then all at once, and with the full knowledge that there is no controlled version of it. Who had told me about the foundation on our second dinner, leaning forward with her elbows on the table the way she does when she forgets to perform composure, talking about the Bronx waitlist with an anger that was really grief and a grief that was really love for people she had never met but had promised to help. I had thought, standing at that window, that I would dismantle it. That I would go to the foundation's board, explain the situation, restructure the financial relationship, and rebuild the donor architecture from scratch with clean instruments. It would be complex and costly and require significant legal management, but it was possible. I had the resources and the legal team to make it possible. Then I read the second document in Silas's folder, which I had not initially noticed because I stopped at the first one. The second document was a letter. My father's letterhead. Addressed to Silas and dated 4 months before I took the company, before the transition of leadership was publicly announced. It was brief. It laid out the operational structure, confirmed the foundation's role in it, and closed with a single paragraph that I have not been able to stop reading in my head since the night Silas showed it to me. The paragraph said that in the event of any attempt to dismantle the current structure, my father had prepared a parallel evidence package, documentation that, in his words, would ensure the foundation's director bore primary criminal responsibility for the operation's financial activity. He wrote that the director's signature on the quarterly reports constituted sufficient legal exposure to make prosecution both viable and straightforward. He wrote that he was sharing this contingency with Silas so that if Roman ever moved to interfere, Silas would understand the consequences. He used Eden's name. Her full name, in a letter written 4 months before I introduced her to anyone in my professional life, 4 months before I had even told my father she existed. He knew about her before I told him. I have thought about what that means every day for 14 months and I have not reached the end of the thinking. I did not go to the authorities. I know how that looks. I have sat in this study at 2 in the morning enough times in the last 14 months to have fully examined how it looks, and I will not pretend it looks like anything other than what it is, a man who knew about a crime and did not report it. There is no framing of that which makes it innocent. I am not trying to make it innocent. I am trying to explain the geography of the trap I was standing in, which is not the same thing as excusing the fact that I stood in it. If I dismantled the structure openly, my father's evidence package went to the DOJ. Eden's name went with it, attached to 14 months of financial transactions she signed off on in good faith, and a federal prosecutor would not require her actual knowledge to build a viable case. Reckless disregard is a real legal standard, and she had signed everything. She would be charged. She might be convicted. And the foundation, the children on the wait list, the housing units, Amara's drawing on the wall that she told me about once, in the kind of detail that tells you something is sacred to a person, all of it gone, consumed by a prosecution that would eat the organization to get to the story. So I kept it running. I kept it running, and I told myself I was buying time. Time to find a way to neutralize my father's evidence package before I moved against the structure. Time to identify who inside the DOJ might be a clean contact versus a compromised one. Time to understand the full architecture of what Silas had shown me well enough to dismantle it without triggering the contingency. 14 months. I have not found the way yet. What I have found, in the last 3 weeks, is that Eden is finding it herself. And this is the thing that keeps me awake past 4 in the morning now, not the original discovery but this, watching the woman I love move through our life with the careful deliberate intelligence of someone who has already decided what she is doing and is doing it without me, and knowing that I did this, that my silence and my management and my protection that was not protection made this the only path she trusted. She could not come to me. I did not give her reason to come to me. I kept everything between us clean and warm and ordinary and loving while the basement ran underneath, and I told myself it was for her, and I have sat in this study enough nights to know with certainty that it was partly for her and partly because I did not know how to look at her face when she found out. I am not a man who frightens easily. I have been in rooms with people who have done things that would make most men's blood stop, and I have sat across from them without flinching because flinching costs you everything in those rooms. But the thought of Eden's face when she understands the full shape of what I let run through her foundation, through her children, through the 6 years of everything she built from nothing, that thought has cost me more sleep than anything my father has ever done. She mentioned Monarch Gate 2 weeks ago at the kitchen island, casual and careful, the question buried in audit logistics like a letter slipped inside another letter. I answered in 10 words and moved back to the salt, and I felt her watching the back of my neck with a stillness that told me she already knew. Not everything. But enough. And I said 10 words because saying more would have required lying in a way that I cannot bring myself to do to her face, and 10 words I could make true enough to stand on. She asked about a subsidiary with the precision of a woman who has already looked up the subsidiary. I gave her 10 words and I went back to the salt, and I stood at that stove and I thought, she is not going to wait for me to fix this, and I thought, good, and I thought, I am terrified of what she is going to do, and I thought, she is going to do it better than I could. And all 4 of those things were true simultaneously, and none of them solved the problem of my father and his contingency package and the specific way he says her name when he calls me on Sunday evenings. It is 2 in the morning on a Wednesday. Eden is asleep in the bedroom. I can hear her breathing from here if the apartment is quiet enough, which it is. She breathes all the way out when she sleeps, a full complete exhale that she does not do when she is awake and managing things. When she is awake she holds some of every breath, a small reserve, the physical habit of a woman who has learned to keep something back. When she sleeps she lets it all go. I have lain awake listening to it for 8 months, and I have never told her that I do this because it is the kind of thing that would embarrass her, and also because it is mine, this small private knowledge of her most unguarded self, and I have very few things that feel like mine right now. My phone lights up on the desk. I look at it. It is not Sunday. He does not call outside Sunday evenings, which is a rule he established and has followed for 3 years, which means this call is not routine, which means something has changed. I pick up. It's late, I say. It's late for you, my father says. I keep different hours. His voice is the same as it has always been, measured and unhurried, The voice of a man who has never needed to raise it because the authority in it does the work without volume. I spent the first 20 years of my life wanting to sound like him. I spent the following 14 years learning what that voice had done with its authority and deciding I would rather sound like no one. What do you want? I say. I want to talk about your fiancé, he says. I say nothing. She's been asking questions, Roman. A pause. Not a hesitant pause. A deliberate one, the kind he uses when he wants the weight of what he just said to settle before he adds to it. About Monarch Gate. About the donation structure. About a few other things that suggest she has more information than a nonprofit director should have about the operational side of things. How do you know what she's been asking? I say. Because I have people in positions to know, he says, simply, as if this is obvious, as if the idea of not having people in positions to know is the strange thing. Handle it, he says. She's asking questions, Roman. Handle it. I am quiet. I look at the window. The city outside. The same city I look at every time I am in this chair at this hour trying to find the thing in it that tells me what to do. It has never told me anything. It just goes on. She's fine, I say. Leave her alone. A pause. You misunderstand me, my father says, and his voice has not changed in temperature or pace, and this is the most frightening thing about Victor Calder, that his voice does not change when the content does. I'm not asking you to speak with her about her curiosity. I'm asking you to manage the situation. The situation is becoming a liability. She is not a situation, I say, and I hear the edge in it, the first edge I have let into my voice since I picked up, and I hear my father hear it and I hear him decide how to respond to it. Roman, he says. Just my name. The way he used it when I was a boy and had done something he found disappointing, not loudly, never loudly, just my name with the weight of his expectation behind it, which was always sufficient. She's fine, I say again. I'll handle the situation. Not her. Leave her alone. That wasn't what I meant by handle it, he says. The apartment is very quiet. I can hear Eden's breathing from the bedroom. Full exhales. Complete, unguarded, asleep. My father says nothing else. He doesn't need to. In 30 years of knowing Victor Calder, I have learned that the thing he doesn't say is always louder than the thing he does, and what he did not say just now sits in the phone line between us like a third person in the conversation, specific and cold and absolutely clear. Good night, I say. I hang up. I sit in the study at 2 in the morning with the dark city outside and my phone in my hand and the sound of Eden sleeping 12 feet away, and I think about my father's voice saying that wasn't what I meant, and I think about the evidence package in whatever location he keeps it, and I think about Eden on a Tuesday in Queens in a diner I do not yet know about, sitting across from a federal detective with her coffee pushed to the side of the table and a steadiness in her eyes that I know the specific quality of, because I have watched her be steady in the face of things that would move most people, and it is one of the things I love most about her and one of the things that frightens me most about what is coming. I think about 14 months of 4 a.m. I think about 10 words at the kitchen counter and the way she watched my back. I think about my father's voice saying handle it. I put my phone on the desk. I press my fingers into my eyes and I sit in the dark and I think, she is already 3 moves ahead of where I thought she was, and I think, my father knows she is asking questions, which means someone inside the foundation or inside my own company is watching her, and I think, I have to find out who before he does something I cannot undo. And then I think the thing I have been not thinking for 14 months, the thing I have been managing and strategizing around and using every available form of rational distance to avoid thinking directly. I think, she is going to find all of it. And I think, when she does, she is not going to need me to fix it. And I think, I am glad. And then, immediately after, I think, I am not sure she is going to be safe while she does it. That last thought does not let me put it down. It sits in my hands like something live. I look at the window. I look at the phone. I look at the dark gap of the hallway that leads to the bedroom where she is sleeping. I stand up. I go to the doorway. I look at her in the dark for a moment, this woman who is 3 moves ahead and does not know that my father is aware she is moving, and I think about what Victor Calder means by handle it, and I make a decision that I should have made 14 months ago. I go back to the desk. I pick up my phone. Not my father's contact. A different one. A lawyer I have been paying a retainer to for 2 years for the specific purpose of the day I decided to move, a woman who does not know the details but knows the nature of what she is being kept on standby for, and who I told when I hired her that when I called her it would be urgent and she would have 48 hours to be ready. I look at the time. 2:16 in the morning. I call her anyway. She picks up on the third ring, which tells me she was not fully asleep, which tells me she has been waiting for this call the way you wait for something you know is coming. It's time, I say. Chapter 10. Lyra Bennett, the twist inside the foundation. The thing about a lie embedded inside a truth is that it has a particular texture. It doesn't look different. It doesn't sound different. But if you have been paying attention long enough to know the shape of how something normally moves, a lie inside it creates a friction so small you would miss it on any ordinary day. A half second of wrongness. A word that lands a quarter beat late. The kind of thing that your body registers before your brain catches up, the way you feel a step miscounted in the dark before you understand why you stumbled. I have been paying attention for 4 weeks. Lyra Bennett is presenting the quarterly strategy at the head of the conference table, and she is doing it with the particular warmth and command of someone who genuinely loves this room and this work, and she always has. That has always been the thing about Lyra. She doesn't perform enthusiasm, she carries it, and it reads as real because I have never had reason to look at it as anything else. She is going through the donor engagement calendar for Q1, clicking through the slides with the smooth ease of someone who built them herself and knows every number on them, and the room is listening the way rooms listen to her, which is attentively, because Lyra Bennett is the kind of woman that rooms attune to. She says, following up from the Hargrove Group meeting last Thursday. I write something on the notepad in front of me. Not a note about the Hargrove Group. A date. Last Thursday. I write it and I put my pen down and I keep my eyes on the slide and I keep my face exactly where it was, interested and present, the executive director in her board meeting, and I think about the shared calendar. I manage the foundation's shared calendar personally. Not every entry. Theo handles the operational scheduling, the site visits and the staff meetings and the vendor calls. But donor meetings come through me or through Nadia and they go into the shared system and they exist on the record before they happen, not after, because donor relationship management is the kind of thing you document in advance so that 3 people always know what is being said to whom on behalf of the organization. There was no Hargrove Group meeting on the shared calendar last Thursday. I know this because last Thursday I was in the office until 8 and I went through the week's donor activity log as I do every Thursday evening, and the Hargrove Group was not in it. Lyra moves to the next slide. She talks about Q1 targets. She talks about a gala sponsorship tier she wants to restructure. She is completely composed, completely fluent, a woman in full command of a presentation she has prepared carefully, and there is not a flicker of anything wrong on her face. I look at her face. I look at the slide. I pick up my pen and I make a real note this time, in the margin of my notepad where it looks like a meeting annotation, the kind of shorthand I use constantly so that no one looking at it would read it as anything other than work. But what I write is not about the presentation. What I write is a question with a circle around it. I circle it twice. The meeting ends at 11:40. People gather their things and there is the usual post-board meeting dispersal of conversation, the sidebar discussions that are sometimes more productive than the formal session, and I move through them with the automatic social grace of a woman who has run these meetings for 6 years. I say the right things to the right people. I walk Lyra to the door and she smiles at me and squeezes my arm the way she does, warm and easy, and says the strategy is going to be a strong quarter, and I agree with her, and I watch her walk down the hallway and I keep the smile on my face until she turns the corner. I go to Nadia's office. I close the door. Nadia looks up from her desk and reads my face in the time it takes most people to register that I've walked in. She puts down her pen. What, she says. Lyra referenced a donor meeting last Thursday, I say. The Hargrove Group. It's not in the shared calendar. Nadia's eyes go very still. Are you sure? I went through the full donor log Thursday evening, I say. It wasn't there. She is quiet for a moment. It could be a scheduling error, she says, and the way she says it tells me she does not think it is a scheduling error. Pull her onboarding file, I say. Everything we have from when she joined the board. References, background documentation, the recommendation letter from the Calder Holdings liaison. All of it. Nadia looks at me for a beat. Then she opens her laptop. I sit across from her and I wait, and the office is quiet except for the keys and the occasional sound of the building around us, the specific background noise of a place that is working, children's voices faint from a program room 2 floors down, Theo on a call at his desk outside the glass partition. Nadia is good at this. She has been doing legal and compliance work long enough that she knows exactly where documentation lives and what its absence means when it doesn't. She moves through the Foundation's file system with the efficiency of someone who organized it herself, which she did, and she pulls up Lyra's board application folder and opens it and starts going through it item by item, and I watch her face. Her face does not change for 4 minutes. Then she stops. She looks at the screen. She looks at something on it and she is very still for a moment, the specific stillness that is different from concentration, the stillness of a person encountering something that is wrong in a way that confirms a category of wrong rather than introducing a new one. Lyra listed 3 previous nonprofit board positions on her application, Nadia says, and her voice is level and careful. The Arts Education Collaborative of Philadelphia. The Meridian Community Foundation. And an organization called the Hartwell Children's Initiative, based in Boston. And, I say, I'm calling the Arts Education Collaborative first, she says, and she picks up her phone and she dials and she puts it on speaker and we listen to it ring, and when someone answers she gives her name and her title and says she is conducting a routine board member background verification and asks to confirm the board service of a Lyra Bennett between 2019 and 2021. There is a pause on the other end. The sound of typing. Then the person says they have no record of a Lyra Bennett serving on their board in any capacity. Nadia thanks them and hangs up. She calls the Meridian Community Foundation. Same answer. Different voice. Same nothing. She opens a new browser window and types the name of the third organization and the search returns 4 results, none of which are the organization itself. She digs for 2 minutes. She tries the IRS nonprofit registry, the state charity registrations for Massachusetts, the Foundation Center database. She looks at me. The Hartwell Children's Initiative does not appear to exist, she says. The room holds that. I look at the wall above Nadia's desk, which has a print she's had since law school, a quote I have read so many times I stopped seeing it, and I read it now. I look at it and I breathe in and I breathe out and I think about Lyra Bennett squeezing my arm in the hallway 12 minutes ago and saying it's going to be a strong quarter. She was recommended by the Calder Holdings Foundation liaison, I say. 18 months ago, Nadia confirms. I have the letter. I'm looking at it right now. She pauses. Eden. She has been on this board for 18 months. She has been in every meeting. She has access to every board-level document, the financials, the program reports, the donor records, the governance files. Another pause. She was in the room when we discussed the audit prep. I stand up. Don't call anyone, I say. Don't flag it internally. Don't change her access permissions, don't alter anything in the system, don't do anything that would indicate to anyone looking that we've found this. Nadia's jaw tightens. Eden. Not yet, I say. If she knows we know, whoever put her here knows we know. We need more before we move. I pick up my bag. I'll be back in an hour. Where are you going? Nadia says. I need to make a call, I say. I take the stairs to the parking garage under the building because it is the one place in the Foundation's vicinity that does not have foot traffic and is not covered by the building's internal cameras, which I know because I approved the security infrastructure 2 years ago and I know exactly where the coverage ends. I find the concrete pillar in the far corner of level 2 where the signal is weak enough that a conversation will not carry, and I stand against it and I take Reed's card from the inside pocket of my bag and I look at the number in pen. I dial from my personal phone because the payphone is 20 blocks away and I do not have 20 blocks of time right now, and because some calculations shift when the urgency shifts, and this is urgent enough to accept the risk. It rings once. Reed, he says. I have a name for you, I say. A board member at the Foundation. Lyra Bennett. She's been on the board for 18 months. She came in on a recommendation from a Calder Holdings Foundation liaison and her background documentation is fabricated, 3 previous board positions that either don't have records of her or don't exist. The line goes quiet. Not the quiet of a man thinking. The quiet of a man who has just heard a name he already knows in a context that confirms something he has been sitting with. I know the difference. Reed, I say. Don't let her know you know, he says. His voice has dropped into the flat, careful register he used on the sidewalk the first day, the voice of someone managing new information against existing information in real time. Go back into that building and behave exactly as you have been behaving with her. Don't change anything. Don't look at her differently. Don't ask questions that touch anything she'd connect to this conversation. I understand operational caution, I say, and I hear my own voice go tight at the edges. How long have you known about her? A silence. A different silence than the first one. This one has weight in it, the weight of something he was hoping not to be asked yet, and I feel the specific cold of already knowing what the answer is going to be before he gives it. Read, I say. How long? She was how we found the foundation in the first place, he says. Quietly. Carefully. The way you say something you have been deciding whether to say for a long time. I close my eyes. I stand in the parking garage with my back against a concrete pillar and my eyes closed and the smell of oil and cold concrete around me, and I let that sentence do what it does, which is restructure everything I thought I understood about the sequence of events. Lyra Bennett was how they found the foundation. Which means Lyra Bennett was reporting on the foundation before I found the server room. Before Nadia asked about Monarch Gate. Before I photographed anything on a Thursday night in November. Before all of it, Lyra Bennett was in my board meetings and my strategy sessions and my financial reviews, and she was the reason Marcus Reed knew where to look. Which means either Reed placed her, which makes her his asset, his instrument, a woman operating inside my organization on federal instruction, or someone else placed her and she found her way to Reed, which makes her something more complicated and considerably more dangerous. Which is she, I say. What do you mean, he says. Is she yours, I say. Or is she someone else's who came to you? Another silence. This one longer. That's a conversation for a different setting, he says. That is not an answer, I say. No, he says. It isn't. I open my eyes. I look at the concrete wall in front of me and I think about 18 months of Lyra Bennett in my conference room, saying the right things, enthusiastic and warm and competent and completely present, and I think about the arm squeeze in the hallway this morning and the way she said it's going to be a strong quarter, and I think about what it means to be that good at being someone you are not for that long. I think about how good I have become at it myself in the last 4 weeks. I think about the difference between us, which is that I know which side I am on and I am not yet certain I know which side she is on, and that uncertainty is the most dangerous thing in this garage right now. Don't approach her, Reed says. Don't confront her. Don't change the temperature of your relationship with her by a single degree. Can you do that? I think about sitting across from Roman every night for 4 weeks. Yes, I say. I can do that. Good, he says. Reed, I say. Yes. The next time I have a conversation like this with you, I say, I expect you to have already told me everything I am about to discover on my own. I am done finding things out and then finding out you already knew them. That is not cooperation. That is management. And I will not be managed. A long pause. Understood, he says. I hang up. I stand in the parking garage for a moment longer and I look at nothing and I think about a room I have been sitting in for 18 months with a woman I believed was my colleague and who was something entirely different, something I still don't fully know the name of, watching me build the case that was going to save my foundation while she watched me build it for someone else. I think about who that someone else might be. I think about a letter my father wrote with my name in it 4 months before he knew I existed. I think about a Sunday phone call and a voice that says handle it. I think about the shape of a trap when you are finally standing far enough outside it to see all its edges at once, and I think the shape of this one is larger than I have understood it to be, and older, and the people inside it include at least one person I have not yet identified who has been there since the beginning. I put my phone in my bag. I straighten my coat. I take the stairs back up to the 4th floor and I push open the door to the hallway and I walk past Amara's drawing on the wall and I do not stop this time, and I go back into the office where Lyra Bennett's board file is open on Nadia's laptop and Nadia is watching the door for me with the expression of a woman who has been sitting with something she cannot say out loud. I look at her. She looks at me. I shake my head once, slightly, which means not here and not now and not yet, and she closes the laptop and she picks up her coffee and she looks at the window and I sit down across from her and we do not say anything and the office goes on around us and somewhere 2 floors below a child laughs at something, clear and sudden and completely unguarded, And I sit in the sound of it and I think about how much I have to do before I can make sure that laugh is still safe. There is someone in this building who is not who they said they were. I have been in this building for 6 years. I intend to still be standing in it when this is over. But Lyra Bennett is going to have to go. Chapter 11. The dinner where everything almost breaks. The restaurant is on the Upper West Side and has 22 tables and a menu that changes every week, and a maitre d', who has known Roman's name for 6 years and mine for 2, which means he greets us at the door the way you greet people whose presence you are genuinely glad of rather than professionally obligated to perform gladness toward. Roman has his hand at the small of my back when we walk in, the lightest possible contact, barely weight at all, and my body responds to it the way my body has always responded to it, which is to say immediately and without consulting me first. This is the problem with loving someone in the specific way I love Roman. It is not a decision I make. It is a condition I am in. And conditions do not suspend themselves because you have discovered something that should logically end them. He pulls my chair out. I sit. He sits across from me and he opens the menu even though we have been here enough times that we both know what we will order, and he reads it with the slight focused attention he gives everything, and in the candlelight he looks like himself, which is the most disarming thing he can possibly look like. The duck, he says, not looking up. The duck, I agree. He closes the menu. He looks at me. He smiles in the way that is just for this, just for evenings like this one, small and unhurried, the smile of a man who is exactly where he wants to be. I feel it in my sternum like a tuning fork struck against something solid, the specific resonance of 2 years of dinners and mornings and midnights and all the ordinary and extraordinary weight of knowing someone, and I smile back because I cannot not smile back and because I am also, at this exact moment, a woman who has been to a federal detective's diner in Queens twice this week and who has a notebook in the inside pocket of her bag that I moved from my coat this morning because coats get taken at restaurants. I am smiling at him from behind all of that. He pours water. How was the rest of your week, he says. Long, I say. The audit prep is making everyone anxious. Theo reorganized the filing system twice and I think he's going to do it a third time before Friday. Roman almost smiles. Theo reorganizes things when he can't control the larger situation. I know, I say. It's either the filing system or his desk plants. This week it's the filing system, which means the anxiety is bigger than usual. Or the plants are next, he says. Don't say that, I say. He has 7 plants. It'll take him all weekend. He laughs. It is a real laugh, the low surprised one, the one that doesn't perform itself, and I watch it happen on his face and I feel the thing I always feel when he laughs like that, which is the warmth of being the person who caused it, and beneath the warmth the specific weight of knowing what I know, and beneath that a grief I am not ready to name yet. This is what the last 4 weeks have been like. Warmth and weight, alternating, sometimes simultaneous, every moment carrying both things at once like a chord that is one note too many and should sound wrong but somehow doesn't quite. The food comes. We eat. He tells me about a meeting that went sideways this morning, a real estate negotiation that collapsed in the last hour when one party's attorney revealed a clause that the other party's attorney had apparently missed for 3 weeks of review, which Roman describes with the dry precise irritation of a man who finds incompetence genuinely offensive on a philosophical level. I listen and I ask questions and he answers them and we talk about it the way we talk about his work, which is with the ease of 2 people who have learned each other's professional languages well enough to move through a conversation without translating. He asks about the Bronx facility. He asks about a staff member I mentioned last week who was having a difficult time. He asks these things not as conversation filler but with the attentiveness he has always given the things I tell him, following up on the specifics, the names, the details, the way you follow up when you have actually listened rather than waited for your turn to speak. I tell him everything I would have told him on any other evening and the telling feels normal and feels like lying simultaneously, which is the sensation I have been living inside for 4 weeks and which I have not fully adjusted to and do not expect to. He refills my wine without asking. There's a new pasta on the menu, he says, reading the insert the waiter left. Apparently it's been on every table since Tuesday and no one has ordered it. Why, I say. No one knows what it is, he says. The name is in Italian and the description says seasonal, and apparently that's not enough information for anyone to commit. Order it, I say. He looks up. You order it. I'm having the duck, I say. So am I, he says. Someone should order the mystery pasta. You founded a company worth $3 billion, I say. You can order an unknown pasta. He looks at me for a second and then he sets the insert down and signals the waiter, and when the waiter comes he orders the pasta with the same authority he uses for everything, as if it were not a gamble at all, as if the outcome of the mystery pasta is already resolved in his favor. I laugh. Both of them, the Real laugh, the one that happens before I can direct it, and he watches me laugh with the expression he wears when he has done something specifically to produce this result, quiet and satisfied, and I sit in the laugh for as long as it lasts, and I let myself be here, fully here, in this restaurant with this man on this ordinary extraordinary night. The mystery pasta arrives. It is squid ink with something citrus and something I cannot identify, and it is very good, which he accepts without saying "I told you so," which is the most Roman Calder response to being right about something that exists. "Try it," he says, pushing the plate slightly toward me. I take some. It is good enough that my expression says so before I can moderate it, and he reads my expression the way he always reads my expression, and the corners of his mouth move. "See," he says. "Don't," I say. "I didn't say anything," he says. "You were about to," I say. "I was going to say the chef clearly knows what seasonal means," he says. "That's the same as saying you were right." "It's a different emphasis," he says, and there it is, the second laugh, bigger than the first, and he is watching me laugh and he is smiling, and his hand comes across the table and covers mine on the tablecloth, not pressing, just resting there, warm and deliberate and completely familiar, and I look down at our hands and I think about the ring, and I think about the notebook in my bag, and I think about the diner in Queens and the parking garage and the Connecticut address I wrote on my wrist. And I think about 14 months and a folder and a father who says handle it. And I leave my hand exactly where it is. Because removing it would mean something, and I am not ready for what it would mean, or I am not ready to mean it tonight, in this restaurant, in this light, with the squid ink pasta on the table between us and him watching me with the specific warmth that is only ever directed at me. He looks at me. His thumb moves once across the back of my hand, a slow small gesture that is so habitual and so completely his that it makes something in my chest press outward against my ribs. He says, still looking at me, still with the same warmth in his eyes, in the same even and unhurried tone he has been using all evening, "You've been to Queens twice this week." The table does not move. The restaurant does not change. The candle between us goes on burning. His hand is still on mine and his expression has not altered by a single degree, still warm, still present, still the face of the man across every dinner table we have ever shared. I do not flinch. I know I do not flinch because I feel the exact moment my body wants to and the exact moment I override it, a split second of internal work that produces no visible result, and I have been doing this for 4 weeks and I am very good at it now. I went to see an old college contact, I say. He works in workforce development. We've been talking about a possible program partnership for the Bronx facility. I look at Roman when I say it. Directly at him. Not the eye contact of someone demonstrating innocence, which is a different thing and readable, but the ordinary eye contact of a conversation, the natural and unperformed kind. It's early stages. I didn't want to put it in the calendar until there was something concrete to put. He looks at me. 1 second. 2. Then he nods. Not satisfied exactly, not the nod of a man who believes what he just heard, but the nod of a man who has decided what to do with it, which is not the same thing, and I know the difference, and I sit with the difference and I do not look away from it. He pours more wine. The Bronx program needs a strong director, he says. If the partnership has potential, the director is going to matter more than the program design. That's what I told Darius about his essay, I say. Smart kid, he says. And the conversation moves. He lets it move. He picks up a new thread and pulls and I follow it, and we are back in the warm current of a dinner between two people who know each other well, and the moment sits behind us like something that happened in a room we have both walked out of, and neither of us names it, and neither of us goes back. For the rest of dinner I sit in the specific warmth of being perfectly believed by him, which is the strangest and loneliest thing I have ever felt in my life. Lonelier than I was the night I found the server room folder. Lonelier than I was in the parking garage. Lonelier than I was lying awake in his bed in the first week, staring at the ceiling with 12 photographs on my phone and a chest full of questions I hadn't asked yet. Those nights I was alone with the weight of what I knew. Tonight I am alone with the weight of what I know in a room full of his warmth and his attention and the specific quality of his care for me, which has not changed, which has been entirely consistent across every single evening of the last 4 weeks, which is either the most genuine thing I have ever been given or the most skilled management I have ever been subjected to, and I genuinely still, do not know which. That is the loneliness. Not the secret. The not knowing. We walk home because it's only 8 blocks and November has gone cold enough to be clarifying, the air sharp enough that it cuts through the restaurant warmth and makes you feel the outline of yourself. He walks close enough that our arms touch. He does not take my hand, which is something I notice, which I cannot decide whether to read as anything or nothing, which is the state I exist in now, everything potentially meaningful, nothing certainly so. We go up in the elevator. We go inside. He pours water in the kitchen and I change out of my dress, and when I come out of the bedroom he is already on the couch with his shoes off, the specific end of evening unwinding that I know so precisely I could map it. He holds his arm open without looking up from his phone. I sit beside him. His arm comes around me. The city is outside every window, doing what it does. We don't talk for a long time. The silence is warm and habitual, and I sit inside it with my head against his shoulder, and I go over every word of the dinner conversation in my mind with the methodical attention I have been giving everything for 4 weeks. The Queen's question. The exact tone of it. Not accusing. Just noting. Like a man setting down a fact to see what I do with it. The 1 second before he nodded. Whether that second was belief or decision. He falls asleep in 20 minutes. I know the moment because I know the change in his breathing and the weight of his arm and the specific release of his jaw. I stay still beside him and I run the dinner back. Not accusing. Just noting. A man who was asking would have pushed when I answered. A man who already knew wouldn't need to ask. A man who suspected but wasn't sure, a man who was watching to see what shape the answer came in, that man would ask exactly the way Roman asked, and then nod and pour more wine and change the subject and keep the evening warm while he filed the answer away. I don't know which one he is. I have been in this situation for 4 weeks with the most controlled and intelligent man I have ever known, and I still cannot tell, in the moments that matter most, whether I am looking at a man who loves me or a man who is managing me or a man who is somehow both of those things at once. I look at the ceiling. His heartbeat is slow and even under my ear. The city goes on outside. I think about what he said and how he said it, and I think about the second before the nod, and I think about what it means that a man who investigates and builds and strategizes and always prepares, a man who tested a travel mug for 6 hours before he gave it to me, what it means that that man asked me about queens in a restaurant over candlelight with his hand over mine and then let it go with a nod. It means one of 2 things. He believed me. Or he already knew enough that my answer didn't change anything he was already doing. I lie in the warmth of his arm and I stare at the ceiling, and I understand that tomorrow I have to move faster, because if Roman is watching and my father-in-law is watching and Lyra Bennett is watching, then the window I have to work in is narrowing, and when it closes it will close on all sides at once, and I will not have the luxury of lying in anyone's arms trying to read the silence. I need to move first. I need to move now. I close my eyes and I breathe in and I breathe out, and I think about the notebook in my bag and the incorporation papers in the city clerk system and Grace O'Yelleran's word layering and a criminal defense attorney that Nadia has found but I have not yet met, and the Connecticut address I memorized from his filing cabinet, and a contact named V who calls on Sunday evenings. I think about all of it and I let it organize itself in the dark behind my closed eyes into the shape of the next move,